Guys, can you hear me now? I just realized I was talking for about 2, 3 minutes while I was muted. So yeah, welcome to my I've started so I shall finish series on Jodie Arias, the one and only Jodie Arias. For tonight's episode, we have Jodie sporting a nice, cute little green number with rather padded shoulders, I think, looking as demure and as fetching as ever. Guys, just give me a. Oh, you can hear me. Great, thanks. Thanks, guys. So, hello to everyone. Hello to Helen. Cheryl, how are you? Good to see you again. Jackie, I think we have two Jackies in chat. Um, I think one of you you comment under Ed, so I get confused sometimes, but I think you're Jackie as well. And Melanie, how are you? Good to see you again. Yeah, I was having technical issues, shall we say, but we're all good now. So yeah, this is number 6 in my series on the trial of the one and only Jodie Arias, and it's starting to get into the meat of things now. It's starting to get towards the stage when Juan Martinez brings up the gas cans and things and gets more into the nitty gritty of it and slowly starts to break down our heroine Jodie here. She's been pretty strong up until now. She started to crack a little bit in the previous episodes. Yeah, so here's the question I was asking earlier. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts. Who is the better actress, Jodie Arias or Amber Heard? And that is a serious question. Who's the better actress, do you think, in court? Because they're obviously both acting, right? They're both liars and they're both manipulators, but they're both acting. But who's the better actress? I agree, Melanie. Helen thinks Jodie as well. Jackie Hughes thinks Jodie. Isn't that ironic? That's how bad Amber Heard was on the stand. The convicted, possibly psychopathic killer was capable of being more convincing on the stand than she was. What does that tell you? What does that tell you, Amber? Cheryl agrees. Oh, Jackie, you're using your hubby's account. Got you. You don't know how to change it. Ask him. He'll let you know how to change it. Melanie says she also doesn't do that creepy talking to the jury thing. Uh, Jodie, but no, Jodie kind of does. I don't know if she's still doing it at this stage, but she started off trying to address the jury all the time, like Amber did. Oh my God. Sorry guys, I muted myself once again. How long was I on mute there? Someone let me know. What was the last thing you remember me saying in chat? Sorry, Eternal Flame. I forgot to unmute. You can hear me now, guys, right? Yeah. Did you hear me bringing that up, Melanie? That Jodie, she definitely started off doing that same thing where she was addressing the jury after almost every question. She might have relaxed that by the point that we're at now, but she was definitely doing the same kind of thing as Amber did. Yeah, you can hear me again. I don't know. I was talking for a good bit there. I don't know what the last thing was I brought up. I was given a general context here for the trial. So obviously the trial is 2013 here, and the homicide took place in 2008. And by this point here in the trial, this is the third version of Jodie's story. The second version was that a couple of crazed lunatics came in and tied them both up and beat up Travis and killed Travis. By this point, the third story is that Travis was a maniac womanizer, wife beater, and she was taking pictures of him on the day in the shower. And because she happened to drop his camera, he bull rushed her, and she did what any normal person would do in reaction to defend herself by stabbing him 30, 40 times and shooting him through the temple. Okay. Okay, Jodie. And as I was saying earlier, I've put the panel link into the chat. I've pinned it at the top because I get lonely on panel talking to myself sometimes. So if anyone's got anything they'd like to share about the case, about Jodie, any thoughts, and feel free to pop up and join me for a bit. But in the meantime, let's get started here.
Ms. Arias, please take the stand.
Please stand for the jury.
Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury. The defendant and all counsel, Mr. Martinez, you may continue with cross-examination.
Ma'am, yesterday you told us that after your experience or your time in Ehrenberg with Mr. Alexander that you felt like a prostitute, right?
Yes.
But you made other statements with
It's funny you should say that, Cheryl, because myself and Helen, we were posing that same question. If I know it's hard to, but if you can just hypothetically take away the murder here, who's worse out of Amber and Jodie? It's not that easy a question. Oh, hey, enough. Good to see you. I thought you were live. I thought you were going live earlier, Jen. I was disappointed. You need to go live soon. I want to find out what the whole Nobbington thing's all about.
regard to
Hey, Smiley. Good to see you.
your experiences in Ehrenberg, haven't you?
Yes.
Let's take a look at an exhibit, which is exhibit number, get that from the clerk. It's exhibit 490, which comes from your an excerpt from your conversation on May 10th of 2008 with Mr. Alexander. Let's listen to it, see if that's your voice, and then we'll move it in.
And it goes away, but the body absorbs it. Okay, well, you just keep spreading it on as you need it, and you keep slip sliding around. remember the first time that you and I grinded at Ehrenberg, and we both, like, I ended up just coming, and you're like, whoa, I came. You came at the same time. I looked around, and there's just jizz, like, all over. It was so hot. We came together. That was so cool.
Yeah, so Juan is playing some of the voicemails to try and undermine Jodie's narrative that he was being kind of sexually abusive, demanding, of her. But Juan is obviously shown here that it was perfectly mutual.
Yeah. Think about that when you drive through there.
Oh, yeah, always.
So do I.
Ma'am, that's your voice on there, right?
Yes.
And that's you and Mr. Alexander discussing what may have happened in Ehrenberg, correct?
Yes. What did
And-
happen?
Pardon?
What did happen?
What happened in Ehrenberg then, right?
Yes.
And you were talking in very fond tones about that experience in this clip that we just played, weren't you?
Yes.
And it was because it was fun, right?
Yes.
And it was something that you enjoyed, right?
Yes.
So when you tell us that you felt like a prostitute, it really does, it seems to be contradicted by what's on Exhibit 490, right?
Not if you understand why I said that.
Well,
It's a good point, Jackie. Yeah, Chris Watts, Jodie, even. I mean, how long were Amber and Johnny Depp together? They were all relatively brief relationships, and they did get rather obsessed rather quickly. I think Amber and Jodie was and Johnny was a bit longer though, right? But yeah, it's a good point.
you do say that you enjoy the visit to Ehrenberg, correct?
Yes.
You do enjoy the sex in Ehrenberg, correct?
Yes.
I remember for the
Okay, 6 years. Okay,
Objection.
count that one out then.
And we also had another conversation involving Ehrenberg with people from 48 Hours,
You
right?
think you're a prude, Jackie?
I have that marked as an exhibit.
Yeah, Jackie. Juan Martin is one of the best. He
No additional
he took
objection,
this
Your Honor.
personally.
Anyone is admitted.
He took a personal satisfaction in holding Jodie accountable.
Just tell me more about him. Like, what it was that was special about him?
He really was an amazing person to know. He was generous, one of the most generous people that I've ever encountered.
Yeah, so here's one of her media interviews prior to this third story that she concocted, and obviously it's an entirely different narrative about the relationship between her and Travis.
There was one point where we were in Ehrenberg. I think that's Arizona. It's right on the border of Arizona or California. It's Ehrenberg. And we were driving up, we were hitting the freeway to go to a movie theater. And we stopped at the stop sign to get onto the freeway, and there was a lady there holding a sign. I don't remember if it said, "We'll work for food," or "Hungry," or "God bless," or something like that. But either way, he pulled over. We were in his BMW, rolled down the window, and he said, "Are you hungry?" And she said, "Yeah." And so with that, he turns around and we go to Wendy's and we get the triple decker that Wendy's sells and the biggie fries and the biggest drink that you could get. And we drove back and gave it to her, and she was really grateful. And she just went over and sat down away from the freeway and started eating and had dinner that night. So just little examples like that. That's just one of so many that people could tell you about his generosity. So there were so many attractive qualities about him. He was very kind. When I moved to Mesa originally, I downsized from a house to a room. And I didn't have a place to put my art. I didn't have a place to put my books and some of the things that were really precious to me. So he allowed me to use, he had so much storage
Jodie's art is a heap of shit, by the way, just in case anyone's wondering.
available in his home. So he allowed me to use a lot of that storage to put things in his home, in his garage.
It's always the worst artists that brag about their art. That's something you'll notice in life.
In his closet, in his office, things like that. So and it wasn't even a question. He was just like, put it at my house, you know? It wasn't like he was doing me this big favor. It was just like, of course, you know, why think twice about it? So he never was showy about how generous he was. He was just, it just was like second nature to him.
Man, when
I just added a volume booster to this, an extension. Let's see if it works. We're at 5 minutes.
Ms. Arias, please take the stand.
right?
Yes, according to the questions I was asked.
Well, yes or no?
Yes,
And you told us about going to Sizzler, right?
yes,
You told us about him grabbing your rear end, right?
yes,
You told us about the sexual encounters, right?
yes.
You told us that really wasn't a romantic weekend at all.
No, it wasn't.
And in fact, the indication from you, from the witness stand, was that this was a pretty bad weekend all the way around, wasn't it?
No, I didn't say that.
Well, your indication was that all he wanted was sex, right?
It seemed that way.
Well, if it seemed that way, that was your belief, right?
Not at the time, but in retrospect.
Oh, is that the Pandora? Miss Pandora. Good to see you.
Yes,
So, as you sit here today,
been a while.
it looked like, or not looked like, all he wanted was sex, right?
mostly.
Well,
Not
is
all,
it
but
yes or no?
Mostly.
And when you got there, according to you, that's the first thing that happened, right?
Yes,
And then you guys sat around at some point and started to look at TV or watch TV, correct?
yes,
And at some point you went out to dinner, right?
yes,
And at another point you went to the movies, right?
yes.
And you indicated that, well, to you, that was the way you said it. It wasn't a very romantic.
Oh, guys, wait till you hear this news straight off the press, just for you guys. An exclusive here. Amber Heard is now offering a tell-all book. Can you believe it? Can't say I'm shocked. Well, she has to hit while the iron is hot.
Romantic weekend, right?
Not overly romantic. In fact, there wasn't really any romance that
Ma'am,
weekend.
I'm not asking you to embellish right now. I'm asking you whether or not you told us before that it was not a romantic weekend. That's what you said on direct, correct?
Yes,
And you didn't tell us about this circumstance where he stopped and he gave this woman this burger from Wendy's either, did you?
no,
It appears that there are two sides to what went on in Ehrenberg, doesn't it?
no,
She's certainly got bills to pay, Melanie, but she's also got attention to seek, and she's got a certain Johnny Depp to send messages to. She is not. She is not going away. She is not giving up.
Well, it appears that there's the side that we just heard from where you enjoyed the sex, right?
yes,
A side where you and he were driving around, correct?
yes.
And he helped some homeless person, right?
I think she was homeless.
Well, it's somebody that was standing there at the side of the road, right?
Yes,
And with some sort of sign. And it looks like this is based on what we heard from the previous excerpt. It looks like you were sort of reminiscing back on May 10th of 2008, reminiscing in a very positive fashion, right?
May 10th, 2000. Oh, yes. I was.
That's the phone call that we just listened to prior to this.
Yes,
And it looked like you were reminiscing in a very positive fashion, right?
yes,
Not the same picture that you presented previously with regard to the Ehrenberg meeting, correct?
I was asked about a different time frame.
Ma'am,
So then that would be correct.
the answer is that is correct. right?
Yes,
One of the other things that
Yeah, exactly, Cheryl. She only has a certain window of time, Amber Heard, in which to make all her moves, and then everyone will have moved on.
was presented in this case was that it appeared that Mr. Alexander, from what you presented, was an individual that was totally into sex, correct?
Does anyone else find it really strange the way she drinks her water? Like, with her elbow out so wide? I always notice that.
Was presented in this case was that it appeared that Mr. Alexander, from what you presented, was an individual that was totally into sex,
Strange.
correct?
Yes.
And that's when he was with you, correct?
Me and the girls.
Well, had you ever been in a bedroom with him and another girl,
Yes.
and the three of you had sex?
No.
So when you say that he had sex with other women, you really don't know if that's true or not, do you?
If he was telling me the truth, then it's true.
Well, ma'am,
Close your ears, Jackie. This could get quite explicit.
I'm not asking you what he told you. I'm asking from your personal experience in terms of the situations that you know about. You don't really know of any other circumstances where he had sex with anybody else, right?
I do know.
And you're talking because you were there and you were watching his penis go inside them. Is that what you're saying?
No.
You're just telling us that because of some
Subtle.
conversations that you may have had with
Subtle
somebody
one.
else, correct?
Him.
Other people, right?
Just one person.
And as we know, people don't lie, do they?
That's not necessarily true.
Well, no, people don't lie. That's what you're telling us right now, because you're saying that somebody told me that it must be true.
I said if.
And it's not just a joke. She actually is a far better actress than Amber Heard, right? If you didn't know the whole context of this, if you didn't know the whole story about Jodie, and you didn't know what that she was convicted and she is as guilty as sin, she's far more believable than Amber Heard. Amber Heard, the trained professional actress, it just underlines and emphasizes how transparent Amber Heard is when you compare her to a convicted killer.
Ma'am, you're saying that it's based on what somebody told you, right?
Based on what Travis told me, yes.
And people have a tendency to embellish things sometimes, don't they?
Yes.
Just like you in this case, correct?
Not on the stand, but in this case, yes.
Haven't you lied from the very start of this case until, according to you, you got on the witness stand?
No.
Well, you're saying that you're not lying here, that what you're telling us is the truth, right?
Yes.
But you are telling us that when you spoke with the detective, that wasn't true, correct? Whatever it is that you told him.
Well, some things were not true. Most things.
Most things were true? Is that what you're saying?
Some things were not true.
Did you lie to the detective? Yes or no?
Yes.
And did you lie to him on 2 occasions?
More than 2, yes.
Well, I'm talking about 2 dates. Did you lie to him
Yes.
on 2 dates? And did you also lie to 48 hours?
Yes.
Did you lie to people in Utah?
Yes.
Did you lie to Daniel Freeman?
Yes, everyone.
Right. So you lied to a lot of people, but you're saying that just because you are sitting here in this courtroom, there has been, for lack of a better term, a conversion, and you're now telling the truth, right?
For lack of a better term, yes.
And the same thing with regard to whatever Mr. Alexander tells you, everything that he says, you believe, right?
Not necessarily.
Well, but you do believe the part about the sexual encounters, right?
Yes.
Did you ever talk to the women that were involved to confirm it?
Yeah, Jackie. It is very likely that Jodie could be a psychopath. She's undoubtedly a narcissist. Amber Heard, I think everyone would agree, is an acute, malignant narcissist. People mention as well various other possible diagnoses, but I don't think Amber is a psychopath.
No.
So you don't have any confirmation from
Histrionic, maybe.
whether or not it happened, right?
No.
And it appears, however, though, that
Personality
this
disorder.
sexual interest that he had was directed towards you, wasn't it?
Some of it.
No, most of it, or all of it. Wasn't it directed towards you?
Not all of it. Some of it. Most of it. I don't know. Maybe during the time we were together, most of it. I don't know.
Well, let's take a look at see what was said during May 10th of 2008 about that. And I'll ask you after I play it to see whether or not that is your voice and whether it is part of the previous stuff.
If anyone's interested in hearing what a self-confessed narcissist and psychopath sounds like. If you go to Diane's channel, and I think it's her most recent stream, has a guy called HG Tudor. Um, that's quite a listen. Because I always would have assumed that someone that is truly a narcissist, like a proper malignant narcissist, would not be capable of being self-aware that they actually are narcissistic. But this guy may have just convinced me that it's possible in some circumstances. That's definitely worth listening to. That's on Diane's channel.
Be moved to be admitted before it's published.
Then I'll move for the admission of exhibit 492.
No objection.
492 is admitted.
Yeah, you are right, that in the bath. Oh,
Oh, when we took a bath together,
God.
that was surreal, like honestly. And I think, I mean, maybe the candlelight and the bubbles all had something to do with it, but you were amazing. You made me, seriously, you made me feel like a goddess. Like, I wasn't saying you were like worshiping me, but you made me feel like I was the most freaking beautiful woman on the whole planet. Like, I so felt like I was the goddess. And so, aside from all those warm, fuzzy feelings, but like, it was so sexy and it was so hot. And oh, gosh.
That wasn't hard to make you shut away because you were freaking, you were hot. You are serious, honey. I don't want to question you right now so bad. Start touching yourself.
I am already.
I just started.
I wish those were my hands giving you a hand job.
Honey, so, you know, like, before I met you, I never jacked off. And once I started meeting, I don't know, once a month, once every 2 weeks. Like, since you've left.
She's talking to Travis here, Melanie.
3 times a day.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Well, it's always just a fucking yeah.
Oh my God, right now. I wish you were here. If you were here, my grandparents are asleep. I'd let you right into my bedroom. We'd shut and lock the door, and we would just have a big fuck fest. We'd go at it all night.
That is your voice, right?
Yes.
And that's him telling you that in terms of his sexual activity, masturbation specifically, he didn't masturbate before he met you, right?
No, he didn't say that. He said he hardly ever did.
Well, ma'am, perhaps we should listen to it again so we can hear it. And you're saying that he's not saying, I don't know. Before I met you, I never jacked off. I want you to take a listen to that.
Yeah, so what I was showing you there is the main kind of traits or symptoms of borderline personality disorder. This stood out to me there. Many people with BPD seem to be stuck with a very rigid black and white view of relationships. Either a relationship is perfect and that person is wonderful, or the relationship is doomed and that person is terrible. They seem unable or unwilling to accept any sort of grey area, any nuance in their personal life and relationships. Interesting. I don't know who actually recorded it. Probably Jodie.
That was surreal, like honestly. And I think, I mean, maybe the candlelight and the bubbles all had something to do with it, but you were amazing. You made me, seriously, you made me feel like a goddess. Like, I wasn't saying you were like worshiping me, but you made me feel like I was the most freaking beautiful woman on the whole planet. Like, I so felt like I was goddess.
I know she's
And so,
crazy,
I
but
had some all those warm, fuzzy feelings, but like, it was so sexy, and it
you can see the sadness and regret on her face, can't you?
was so hot, and oh gosh.
Well, that wasn't hard to make you feel that way because you were freaking, you were hot. You are serious with having. I don't want to force you right now because I'm touching yourself.
I am already.
I just started.
I wish those were my hands giving you a hand job.
Honey, so, like, before I met you, I never jacked off.
You hear that?
That's Travis's
Honey,
brother
before I
and
met
sister
you,
there.
I never jacked off, right?
Yes,
And you have no reason to doubt that, do you?
I have plenty of reason to doubt that. Yes, I do have reason to doubt that.
And you're basing your previous statements to us about him being with other women on what he told you, right?
Yes,
And yet we have him here via this technical medium telling us that he never jacked off before he met you. Isn't that what he's saying?
yes.
And so what you're saying is that, well, I'll believe him when it's to my benefit, but I won't believe him when it's not.
Yes, in this context, it's a testimony, we're talking about apples and oranges, sex versus masturbation.
Overruled. You may answer the question.
I don't know because I don't think that's to
Jodie was 28 at the time of the murder. So she was 27, 28 when they were dating.
my benefit or not, either way.
Well, what you're saying to me is, I'll believe him when he tells me that he's having some sort of intimacies with other women. You told us that you believe that, right?
Yeah,
And you
I do.
believe that without talking to the women, right?
Yes,
Yet when we hear him in court saying that he never masturbated or jacked off before he met you, you're saying you won't believe that, right?
based on what he's also
Yes
told me,
or
then
no?
that would be no, because he has jacked off.
Yes or no? You won't believe what he just said there, right?
Travis was a bit older, about 30, 31.
It wasn't consistent, so no.
So no, you don't believe him, right?
No, I don't believe that.
And in fact, with regard to this recording, the person that was recording it was you, right?
Yes,
It wasn't him, right?
no.
And you're saying that it
Yeah, there you go. It was her recording all that. And just remember as well, guys, he's playing all this just to highlight how much the truth undermines her story that, he was sexually demanding, and she wasn't always willing, and she felt, abused by him.
was for his.
She was obviously utterly complicit. That does not mean to say that he did not treat her badly, because I think he did. He led her on, I believe, and treated her like garbage, really, like a side piece. It's leaving the obvious aside. It is quite tragic.
His benefit, though, right? That's what you told.
He was just incredibly unlucky that the person that he treated like garbage had what it took to lose their shit like this,
Was on direct examination, right?
No, I didn't say for his benefit. It was for us to listen to.
Well, it was actually for your benefit, wasn't it?
I don't see how.
Well, in terms of who had control of it, that was you, right?
Control of the recording?
Yes, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a recording that you made on May 10th of 2008. Are we clear on that?
Yes,
That recording was in your control, right?
yes,
It was never in Mr. Alexander's control, was it?
no,
So that if anybody was going to enjoy that recording, it was you.
no.
Well, if anybody had it, it was you then, right?
I had it, yes.
And if anybody wanted to hear it again, that would be, the only person that could do that would be you, right?
That's not right.
How is it that Mr. Alexander could hear it if you were the only person who had it?
That's what we were trying to figure out, how to replay it for him.
Man, you still had control of it though, didn't you?
For about a week, I did.
Well, yes or no, did you have control of it?
Yes, for a week.
You keep saying for a week. Are you saying that you then gave it to him?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
All right, so, but you did have control of this recording in the sense that it was in your telephone, right?
Yes.
It was never in Mr. Alexander's possession, right?
No.
So if anybody wanted to listen to it, they would have to go through you, right?
At that time, yes.
Well, what time do you think we're talking about, ma'am?
I'm talking about for the week following the recording.
I'm talking about
Beyond that, then the answer would be no.
the week following the recording. You keep referencing that. Did something happen to the record? Did you give the recording to Mr. Alexander after a week?
No.
Did you give this recording to Mr. Alexander after 2 or 3 weeks?
No, I never gave it to him.
That's true. So if
Yeah,
anybody
Melanie,
was
right?
going to
Yeah.
enjoy this recording, it wasn't Mr. Alexander.
When I seen Amber on the stand doing the same thing, that was like the first thought in my mind was Jodie Arias. You know, I've never seen anyone be so obvious and so continuous. You know, I just can't believe anyone would imagine that that's a good idea. It just comes across so fake. I don't know how any defense team would not try and stop a defendant doing that. There's no jury going to buy that.
Because he didn't have control of it, right?
That wasn't the purpose of the recording, so that would
Did
be
I
no.
ask you what the purpose?
Oh, hey Irish, how are you? Good to see you. It is so fake, right? It just it just screams out to me that their mind is elsewhere because they're concentrating on having to address the jury continually rather than being immersed in what is important, which is telling the truth and answering the questions.
Of the recording was, ma'am?
No.
I asked you if
Jackie asks, do you think he treated her like trash because he was heartless per se, or because she was so engaging in the dirty talk he thought she was into it? Almost sub dom situation. Um, I think it was a. I think they were both mutually as much into the dirty stuff, but my stomach tells me that he wasn't entirely honest with her because he was obviously a very strict Mormon and he had told many people that he wanted to marry into the Mormon faith, and he allowed her to convert to Mormonism. She did that for him, obviously hoping, um, to be with him forever. She was madly in love with this guy, and she was hoping they were going to be married at some stage. But he clearly had no intention. And from what I've heard from other friends, it was obvious to them that he didn't feel that way about Jodie, but he was never honest with her. Oh, hey, Broken Injustice, good to see you. Driving. Cool. Drive safe. And she let him know that he could treat her like trash and get away with it, so he did. That's right. I mean, it's kinda terrible. I mean, he used to um he used to call her up in the middle of the night. This is when she was staying up near him in Arizona, and he would ask her to come round because he was feeling horny. And there's a few occasions that she refers to when she went round and um, gave him fellatio at the doorstep, and then he threw candy at her and walked away, closing the door. And she was willing and able to do it. Bizarre, right? Melanie says he was never going to marry her. That's right. Yeah, he wanted to marry someone clean, Irish. She was sullied, too sullied for him, but he still wanted to have his cake and eat it in the meantime. Jackie says some of these texts, or some of those texts about her holes, oh my God, I would have slapped him and ran, not changed religion. Yeah, he was bait and switching her, and boy, did he pay. Yeah. Jackie says he made her believe he would marry her, in my opinion. I agree. I agree.
Anybody was going to enjoy the fruits of this, whatever it was, it would have been you, right?
It would have been Travis.
And it just makes it all the worse that he treated her so badly when he was a part of the Mormon faith, you know? Do as I say, not as I do.
Oh, so Travis was going to enjoy it,
He was
even
living
though
a
he
lie.
had no control over it, right?
I don't know how to answer that.
Why don't you know how to answer that?
Because
You're
the
the
way your
one that,
question is
ma'am,
phrased.
excuse me. You were the one that was in control of it, right?
Yes,
And you were the one that actually created that recording, right?
we both created the recording.
Well, no, that's not true. Was he pushing the button over and over to keep it?
Whoops. What happened there? What happened there? Let me go back. Sorry about that, guys. Let me find where I was.
And I'll ask you after I play it to see whether or not that is your voice and whether it is part of the previous clip that we played.
We ask that it be moved to be admitted before it's published.
Well, as always, just a fucking.
So you're saying that somehow he was pushing a button in Mesa so that this recording would come about? Is that what you're saying?
That's not what I'm saying.
There's a period there, right?
Yes.
And my question to you is, if you liked it or didn't like it, did you express any preference either way to Mr. Alexander?
I don't think I did.
Did you forget what you told us that you did after that?
I said his name after that.
And then what after that, what did you remember that you told us that you did?
That he, well, when I said his name and I kind of tried to get out from underneath him, his thrusts quickened, and then after that, we sort of broke apart and he pushed my head under the covers.
Right. So that's the same, we're talking about the same encounter, right?
Yes.
And it was consensual though, even though you were asleep, wasn't it?
Objection, Your Honor, that Mr.
Overruled. Do
I
you
think
know
I'm at the right part here. Not sure.
Well, I didn't object to it.
If I'm
So
at the
if
wrong
you didn't
part,
object
someone let me
to
know.
it, it meant it was consensual, right?
Objection, Your Honor, Mr. President, she was asleep.
approach?
You thought it was okay when he placed his penis inside you while you were asleep, right?
Yes, maybe.
Remember the admission in exhibit 494?
Objection.
494 submitted.
Let's take a look at what 494 says. This is you sending him this text message, right?
Yes,
And this was part of the relationship that you had with him, right?
that's right.
There was a sexual component to it, wasn't it?
Yes,
And it was always a component that you partook of as much as he did, right?
yes,
And in it you say, if you're a lucky boy and you promise to give me a good, well-deserved spanking, and then there's a period there, right?
yes,
And then you also say, maybe you could give my ass a too much needed pounding too. Kidding, correct?
yes,
You're kidding about the second portion, but not the first portion, correct?
yes.
Take a look at exhibit 495.
That's the thing, Jackie, about pure evil. I don't know if pure evil actually exists or not, or if any act of evil always has a genesis based in mental illness or abuse at a younger age. It's still an open question to me. You know, it's the whole nature or nurture question. Are we blank canvases prenatal at birth? Or is it possible to be born with the quote unquote evil gene or disturbed gene? Or is everything dictated to after birth, after conception? It's a big question, that, and I'm sort of undecided, but it's an interesting question.
Do you recognize that series?
If I had to bet, I would suspect that it can all be traced back to postnatal through either environment or your upbringing, your social circumstances, peers, things like that, abuse, family, just so many variables.
Text messages?
Yes.
And those also involve some sexual activities between the two of you, correct?
Yes. Well, ones we're anticipating,
Pardon?
ones we're planning on.
And the date on this is February 26th of 08, correct?
26?
Well, let me have you look at it. At least that's what it says.
It would have been the 25th, but it says the 26th.
And that's because of the 7-hour issue that we've talked about before.
That's right.
I move for the admission of Exhibit 495.
No objection.
Take a look at Exhibit 495. You start out by saying, oh my gosh, this is so freaking hot, I want to lick it up, and then sit on it. You are so tasty, my goodness, correct?
Yes.
You were talking about his penis, right?
Yes, he sent me a photo of it.
And it appears he did send you a photograph, correct?
Yes.
You were not offended by him sending you a photograph, correct?
No.
Even though we had a photograph here that was introduced, it was the same sort of photograph as the one that was introduced at trial, right?
Yes.
Nothing different than the one that was here that was introduced. In other words, it was his penis and whatever was happening with it, correct?
In that regard, nothing was different.
And in fact, he then said, I'm glad you like it, right?
Yes.
And then you said, oh yes, I want to fuck you like a dirty, horny little schoolgirl, right?
Yes.
So the schoolgirl issue here in this conversation is being brought up by you, not by him, right?
That's right.
And in fact, this issue about the schoolgirl that may have been presented as part of the conversation on May 10th of 2008, well, you were enjoying it too, weren't you?
I don't think we said schoolgirl on the tape.
Pardon?
I don't think I said schoolgirl on the tape.
That's a great point, Irish. That's one of the few ways that they can run an experiment to get close to determining that question about nature or nurture. Irish Eye says they know from assessing twins or triplets separated at birth and raised in different environments that there is a genetic component to the way that they turn out. That's pretty convincing, right? It's kind of hard to argue against that.
But as far as that goes, yes.
Yeah. You like dressing up like
It does make you think.
a horny little schoolgirl, for lack of a better term, right?
Well, I think I said on direct I didn't have a schoolgirl outfit, but it was kind of, that was the idea.
You did enjoy dressing up for him, right?
Yes.
And you enjoyed, at least indicating here in February of 2008, that it had to do with looking like a little schoolgirl, correct?
I guess so, yeah.
Well, no, you keep saying you guess so, but isn't that what you wrote?
No, I didn't say look in that text message.
Pardon?
You said looking like, and I don't see that in the text
All
message.
right, so, okay, let's read it. I want to fuck you like a dirty, horny little schoolgirl. So that implies that you are dressed up in a
She's rather calm and collected and holding herself together here at this stage, isn't she?
certain fashion, right?
She's not struggling at all.
Yes.
And it also implies that, or indicates that it's you that's the person that likes this sort of activity and looking like a horny little schoolgirl, right?
Yes.
Although we heard previously some talk about braids and that it was only him that wanted that. It was a consensual, mutual relationship, sexually speaking, wasn't it?
Yes, always.
This, again, this issue involving the idea that there was going to be a movie and what was going to happen in the movie, part of it, or what it took place during a conversation that you had on May 10th of 2008, right?
Yes,
And it can be characterized as phone sex, correct?
yes,
And it can also be fair to say that what people say during phone sex isn't necessarily true. Wouldn't you agree to that?
I would agree to that.
Well, ma'am, what you said in your phone sex conversation with Mr. Alexander, according to your own testimony, part of it was a lie, wasn't it?
Are you talking about how he never jerked off?
No, I'm talking about what you said in that conversation. What you said, part of what was going on was a lie, wasn't it?
Yes, part of it was a lie.
Sure, it was a lie, right? And so at least if we're using this conversation as a point of reference, people, you and Mr. Alexander, but you specifically, you lied to him, right?
I did.
And there was no harm in it because it was just a fantasy kind of conversation, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just fantasy.
Right, and that, so that if he says he wants to tie you up to a tree and stick it up your ass, that could also be seen as fantasy, right?
Yes.
That never happened, did it?
No.
And
Eternal Flame, I watched the documentary on that. It was two men, and by a twist of fate, they met and they both had raped and murdered. So they continue to do the same together. Wow. Can you jot down and chart the name of that documentary if you can remember?
talking about, for example, these things about the movie and that sort of thing, whether or not you believed it or not, it was part of the fantasy of that conversation, wasn't it?
Yes.
So, for example, if you just listen to one of these snippets or one of these exchanges, we can see that perhaps it's just all a fantasy. Let me have this record. I move for the admission of Exhibit 496.
No objection.
496 is admitted.
And ma'am, before we listen to it, in this particular excerpt, you would actually indicate that you believe that maybe this making of this movie could be artistic. I want you to listen to that.
I was saying, I'm kind of envisioning one, like when you're kitty fucking me, but like I'm looking with my head tilted back, so all you can really see is like the outline of my chin and some of my cheek and jawbone, and like my ears and hair, but you can't really see the rest of my face. You could just see a dick between two tits, like in focus with the neck and everything sort of a little bit blurry, but they're like kind of artistic, you know what I'm saying?
That's great.
Yeah, I don't know if we could do that because your legs may take up the spot where the camera should be, but I think we could get something like that. Or vice versa. Ooh, I've got more ideas. Okay, go ahead.
Well, we'll work that out. Worst case scenario, we could do it from like the reverse angle or
Mm-hmm.
just like the other way.
Mm-hmm. And we could still blur my face and put your cock in stuff. You have a good looking dick, baby. I just want to let you know.
You like my dick?
Yeah. It's like, it just, so smooth. And it goes so, every time you fuck me, so good. So you went just where I needed it. Just went where I just needed it bad.
The absolute contrast of her narrative and how she's presenting herself here in court, just the contrast with what Juan is playing of the real Jodie through the recordings. It's not lost on anyone, is it?
You fucked me so right.
You do say that it could be an artistic endeavor, right?
Yes.
And in fact, that comes from the fact that you like to take photographs, correct?
Yes.
And that's sort of one side of your life that you have, correct?
Yes.
And so, again, the fact that you're talking about it doesn't mean that you're actually going to do it, right?
We were kind of tentatively planning it, but I don't know whether we were actually going to do it or not.
Right, it's a situation again that sometimes when people are involved in a sexual situation like what this appears to be, they get caught up in the heat of the moment and they say things that are related to what's going on, correct?
I would agree with that.
And during this conversation, you and he actually discussed whether or not you guys should stop this particular activity of having sex, don't you?
Stop having sex?
Or stop having sex, stop having phone sex, that sort of thing.
I think we did, yes.
Well, let's hear what you actually said. I wrote for the admission of exhibit 497.
No objection.
497 is admitted.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to get pictures of jizz on your face.
That's gonna be cool, actually. It's gonna be.
Try to get one as I'm coming up your face.
Yeah, definitely.
Like mid-shot.
Mm-hmm. You make me so horny. I seriously think about having sex with you every day. Several times a day. Think about how it feels to have your cock deep inside of me.
I think we get the picture, right?
Like, seriously?
No objection.
498 is admitted.
That's right. I asked you not to so I could get in the... Hang on, I thought I heard somebody.
Do you recognize it?
Yes,
It's a text message that you sent, right?
yes.
What's the date?
The date is 21st. Actually, it would have been the 20th of January.
And you're saying that it was the 21st of January because of the time difference, right?
Yes, it was the 20th, but it shows the 21st.
Move for the admission of exhibit 497.
No objection.
499 is admitted.
And that's you sending him a message saying, hey, Hadi Biscotti will you call me before you hit the sack, right?
Yes,
I have a question about tomorrow morning. Thanks, my dear, correct?
that's correct.
And you actually called him Hadi Biscotti, correct?
Yes,
And that's because he was, in part, because he was special to you, right?
yes,
Because apparently at that time you were in love with him, right?
I believe I was. Yes,
And it's something that two people who are intimate have in common, right?
yes,
But he really wasn't that special to you, was he?
I wouldn't say that.
Well, let's take a look at another exhibit. 287. This is to Ryan Burns. You see that? It says Ryan's PPL, Gmail.
Right.
You're me. You see that?
Yes,
And you say to him, at some point before you go meet him, hey, Hadi Biscotti, what's new, right?
yes,
Isn't that the same thing that you called Mr. Alexander?
yes, I call a lot of people that.
So what you're saying is when you call that Mr. Alexander that, it didn't mean anything then.
I wouldn't say it was meaningless, no.
It could also mean that when you started calling Mr. Burns Hadi Biscotti, was that
So they're referring here to Ryan Burns, who was the guy that she was kind of seeing, that she was on her way to see when she hired the car for Salt Lake City on that 5-day trip in which she killed Travis, and she ended up seeing him on the way back on the return. And she's got the same nickname for him as she had for Travis.
Mr. Alexander really didn't mean that much to you, right?
That's not what it meant.
Well, it could, though, based on what we see.
She's answered the question.
Sustained.
You called them both by the same name, right?
Yes,
And you only had one encounter with Mr. Burns, correct?
well, I met him once and then I saw him again, so that would be twice, but if you're talking about the physical encounter, yeah,
Right.
one time, I guess.
Yeah, one time, right?
Unless you count shaking his hand, which I guess that doesn't really
Pardon?
count.
I didn't hear what you said.
I'm sorry, unless you count we shook hands and spoke briefly. I don't even really remember it, so it was pretty brief, but
In terms of a one-on-one with
Yes,
Mr.
that
Burns,
would
it
be
was only
one.
one time, right?
yes,
And you're already calling him Hadi Biscotti, at least through this PPL, or at least through this instant messaging thing, right?
that's right.
And exhibit number 286, it tells us a little bit more of what actually happened when you went to see him. I want you to go down here and read what he says, starting with the ha-ha, if you can read it. If not, I'll bring it in. Go ahead and read it out loud.
It says, haha, well, we woke up, we sat there for a bit, and then we held each other, and then we started to kiss. Then you said I could not be comfortable, and you adjusted me.
So it does say that you told him that he could not be comfortable, and so you adjusted him, right?
Yes.
And then what else does he say? It's above it.
Then you pressed your body really close to mine and started to kiss me.
So you were on top of him, weren't you?
Yes, well, kind of on top of him, off to the side a little. I think on his left.
But you did start to press your body close to him, right?
Yes.
And then you say what? It's right above it.
What? Well, I think it's out of order, but I say, well, I would gladly give it to you.
And then right above it, he asks.
Can I ask what else you might give me?
And your answer is?
You can ask, but you'll have to wait and see for that one.
Bottom line, you're sort of already involved in the same sort of give and take that you were involved with Mr. Alexander, correct?
Yes.
Ma'am, there's a number of stories that you gave in this particular case involving the killing. There was one that you gave on the 15th of July of 2008 to Detective Flores, right?
Yes.
There's another one that you gave on July 16th of 2008 to Detective Flores, right?
Yes.
But then you still gave another view of what happened to 48 hours, right?
I think I was inconsistent in my lies. Yes.
So let's take a look at what you may have
I think I was inconsistent in my lies. That's one way to put it.
said 48 hours. I move for the admission of exhibit 500. No objection.
500 is admitted.
Yeah, let me talk about, I'll talk about this, and nobody knows this. The detectives know this because I've spoken with them. Boy, this is really hard. Trying to think if I want to say this or not. There's a lot of evidence that places me at Travis's house the day he was, or not just the day he was killed, but the day, that most of that week. And there's a reason for that. And that reason is that that I did see Travis the day that he passed away. And a lot of things happened that day. I almost lost my life as well. And I was told that I can't speak about it or tell anyone about it.
This is her second story.
Because my family's life was in danger over it. I was told that if I did, that they would all die and that I would die.
This is the pretend kidnappers apparently telling her, if you say a word, we'll kill your family.
And that was kind of the end of the story. There was an argument among some people, two individuals, that one wanted to take my life, and one said, that's not why we came. And at one point, the guy with the gun sort of succumbed to her pressure, I think, because he was holding the gun at my forehead, and I was on the ground on my knees. And it was near the armoire of where he kept his TV in his bedroom. And Travis was in the bathroom. And she was standing over Travis near him. And he was, the guy with the gun was standing near me. And again, this argument was going on back and forth. And I just remember holding my head and closing my eyes. And then there was so much that went on that day, but the short of it is he pulled the trigger and nothing happened, just a click. And I realized then that he probably, I don't know if that means that he was out of bullets, or I don't know what that means. You know, I wasn't that familiar with handguns. And so at that point, I pushed past him and I ran down the stairs. He didn't make much of an effort to stop me. But I could almost swear that I heard someone following me down the stairs, and I ran out the front door and I got into my car and I drove and I left.
So that's what a liar looks like, guys. Yeah, so they just they didn't manage to stop her running past them down the stairs and out to her car to escape. Okay.
Ma'am, nowhere in that recitation or in any of the interviews that you gave with 48 Hours did you ever indicate that you had memory loss, correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, you gave a slightly different view of the same event to 48 Hours on another occasion, didn't you?
Yes, couldn't keep my story straight.
I move for the admission of Exhibit 501.
No objection.
501 is admitted.
Again, I was looking down and going through some photos. He is really critical of himself. You know, we're all our own worst critics, and so, you know, some pictures he liked, some he didn't. And I was looking through the pictures, and I heard again a loud pop, and I was hit on the back of the head. I don't think I was out very long. But when I came to, I was kind of laying next to the bathtub and the shower right next to each other. And Travis was on all fours on the tile. And he was, well, I say all fours, but one of his hands was actually holding his head. And I mean, he wasn't laying down or anything. He was kind of on his knees and on the, you know, on his hands. And at that point, I looked over toward the entrance of the bathroom. There was a hallway and two people were walking down the hallway, and I ran into the closet. It's a big closet. And I was going to run out the other door, except he stopped me with a gun pointed at my forehead. And I was just, you know, when you have a gun pointed to your forehead, you just do anything. So he told me to get down onto my knees and stand over or sit over by the armoire. So I just stayed there, squatting on my knees next to the armoire. And he left the room for a minute, maybe a few minutes. And she was in the bathroom, standing over Travis. And I charged her. I ran down that hall and I pushed her as hard as I could. And she fell over him, landed near the sink. There's two sinks in the master bath, and he landed near the left sink, near the trash can, close to the windows. And I started to pull on him, and I said, "Come on, come on, come on, let's go, let's go." And
You notice how she's being so careful with her story here to match it up with what she knows are the locations where there's certain evidence within the apartment. You know, someone that went through something so horrendous that's telling the truth just wouldn't give so much detail when it's not necessary. It's necessary for her here because she's lying and she has to match it up with what she knows is evidence in the apartment.
he just wasn't, he was sluggish and lethargic, and he just wasn't getting up, and he wasn't really saying much of anything. He was there and he was conscious, and I could see that. He wasn't saying much. I was able to get him about, he was sort
Oh, hey, Foxy. Good to see you. How are you?
of not crawling, but he was kind of moving and trying to stand up. And I was able to get him about halfway down the hallway when she came back at me, and we struggled for a few minutes. And again, she was doing what she could to overpower me, and she was kicking me, and she was stomping on my feet, and she was trying to kick my knees, and I was kind of bending them or trying to do what I could. And he came back in the room, and again, I had to go back to where I was sitting and stay there. And that's when they both began to argue about whether or not I should die. And there was an argument that went on back and forth between them for several minutes. At least it felt like several minutes. And he didn't want to, and she did. And she kept saying why they should, and he kept saying, well, it's not why we came here. And you know, after he had gone through my purse again, he finally just pulled the trigger. And I thought, honestly, it's over. It's the weirdest feeling to think that it's going to be over at any second, and then someone pulls the trigger, but whether or not I should die.
It's kind of interesting just to watch her body language there, because we obviously know 100% that she's completely lying here. There's parts where she kind of scratches her neck and her head
After he had gone through
that looks so obvious in
my
retrospect.
purse again, he finally just pulled the trigger. And I thought, honestly, it's over. It's the weirdest feeling to think that it's going to be over at any second, and then someone pulls the trigger, but you're still there. And at that point, I just ran. I pushed right past him, and I flew down the stairs. And like, there's part of, like, I wasn't even in my body. I think I was, but everything felt numb. I was hyperventilating, and my heart was racing. And so even as I went down the stairs, there's part of me, like, my brain was telling my legs, don't screw up, or you're going to fly down these stairs, and you're not going to get away.
She's she's actually recalling some truth there. Like, she's telling the truth in regards to how she was feeling there. You know, like a good liar will always incorporate some of the truth within the lie. It's embedded in there, you know.
So I'm, trying my best not to stumble down these stairs, and I just went out as fast as I could and out the door and slammed the door behind me and got in the car and left.
And that's another version of the events that occurred on June 4th of 2008, correct?
Yes.
And they're not true.
Neither of them. Well, it's all the same thing. It's just different versions. Couldn't keep my life.
Foxy, yeah, she is in prison for life. She was lucky, very lucky not to get the death penalty. It was a hung jury twice, essentially, when they were deciding on the death sentence or not. Casey Anthony, it's funny you should bring that up, because I was talking about that there the other day with Cheryl. Um, they, the state went for the death penalty in that case, which I think might have been a mistake. And in a sense, I think the prosecutors let down the state there, you know, because I think because it was a capital punishment case, I think that's how Casey got let off, essentially. You know, if it'd been a lesser charge, I think she would have definitely been found guilty and locked up. That's the danger of going for such a high charge.
Straight.
So the answer is
Without a doubt, Casey's neglect led to her death, Kaylee's death.
they're not true, right?
Neither of them, yes.
In my opinion.
Ma'am, you did also continue to talk to 48 Hours about coming to Mesa. You remember talking to them about that?
Yes.
Exactly, Irish. That's what makes such a mockery of her attempt to come up with this narrative of self-defense. Someone in self-defense doesn't nearly decapitate the aggressor, right? With multiple, I mean, I can't recall how many stab wounds there were. I'm sure it was like 20 or 30 stab wounds and a gunshot through the temple, and as you say, nearly decapitated with the throat slice. She never stood a chance in this trial.
And do you remember talking to them about what your plans were initially. Do you remember about that?
Yes.
And the reason that you came out to Mesa, you didn't have a plan initially, correct?
Do you mean on June 4th?
Pardon?
Are you talking about on June 4th?
I'm talking about when you left Eureka.
What was your question? I'm sorry.
My question is, according to you, you didn't have any plans to come to Mesa initially when you left Eureka, correct?
That's correct.
In fact, that's something that you told 48 hours, right?
Yes.
Take a look at what you told them.
No objection.
502 is admitted.
So tell me about this trip on this particular day. Did you plan that in advance, or did you surprise
No,
them?
I'm really kind of like go by the wind when I take my road trips. I usually plan more than I can actually do, and then I cross some off the list when I feel I can't. So on this last trip, my plan was to go to Monterey, to Los Angeles, to San Diego, to Utah, and then over to Death Valley, and then back up to Eureka. And it certainly didn't go anything like that. It went Santa Cruz and then Monterey. And then I went to LA and Pasadena. And then I skipped San Diego. And it was when I was in Pasadena that night that I decided to go to Mesa. And Travis had found out about my road trip about a week prior. And he has this way of kind of guilting me, not in a bad way, just like of making me sort of feel bad. So he said, well, why don't you come to Mesa instead and you can visit me? And I was like, no, I have other things that I need to do and other plans and other people. I didn't say it in that way because you have to kind of be delicate about it. Otherwise, he would take offense, I think. And so he would say things like, okay, I see, whatever. I see how it is. You don't love me, just as a joke though. And so it just kind of pulls on my heartstrings a little. And again, I was weak and I folded and I decided that I'm going to go. And so I called him when I was in Pasadena and said, guess what? And he said,
The truth is that she planned it in advance. She was mortified because Travis was taking another girl on the trip with work down to Cancun. And she had called him numerous times before leaving to go and hire the car.
what? And I said, I'm coming to Mesa. And he said, really? And I said, yeah. He's like, all right, cool. And so, we hung up the phone and I drove. And I told him he didn't have to wait up for me because, I was still in Pasadena. And that's probably a good 5 hours and something, just all the way to Mesa. So, and as well as that, my phone was about to die. So, I just said, if I don't speak to you again until I get there, then, that's why. And so I showed up, I think around 4 a.m. and he was still awake. He had stayed up all night. He was on the internet looking up some videos on YouTube, some silly videos. And we watched some more videos for a little while. And then it was just like, I was exhausted from the drive. So we just went to bed and went to sleep. And,
With regard to the videos that he was looking at, we've heard something about quicker, faster, stronger, something like that. They weren't of any sexual nature, were they?
no.
And in fact, it may have been the way you described it, that it was some people with some sort of weird or funny headgear that were just dancing around. That's the way you described it,
It
right?
looked that way, yes.
And so you actually left Eureka on June 2nd of 2008, correct?
Yes.
And prior to that, though, you made some preparations, didn't you?
Yes.
You made some preparations in the sense that, according to you, you made a reservation to rent a car, right?
Right.
And the reservation to rent the car was made not in Eureka, but in some other place, right?
It was made online. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, in Reading, for Reading, yes.
Right. And Eureka does have some rental car companies, correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, what happened was that when you went to Reading to rent the car, you even had to, for lack of a better term, inconvenience somebody else to take you to get your car, to get the rental car, and then take you back to their house, right?
That's right.
And it would have been much more convenient in Eureka to go rent the car in Eureka, wouldn't it?
Not for my bank account, no.
Well, when you're saying your bank account, you're talking about financial reasons, right?
Right.
And how much money did you take with you in cash?
I don't recall, but it was probably a few hundred, I think.
So when you say a few hundred, are we talking about 200?
Maybe that, not much more, somewhere in that ballpark. It was between like 80 and 200. I don't remember the exact amount.
So it's between $80 and $200, maximum being $200, right?
I think. I don't really remember as far as cash.
So he's obviously managed to completely undermine her narrative about, Travis forcing her sexually continually. She was completely complicit in that. So he's now working towards establishing the premeditation that went into this murder.
Cash.
Well, could it have been $300?
It could have. I don't remember having that much cash on me, but I guess it could have.
If you don't remember having that much cash on you, then it wasn't $300, right?
Well, it just means I don't remember. Probably not.
All right, and so previously during the direct examination, you told us that when you go on these trips, you don't take usually more than $200. Do you remember telling us that?
Yeah, that's typical.
And so in this particular case, you said, well, I had financial issues, and so I decided to rent out of Reading because it was cheaper, right?
That's right.
But it would have been more convenient, though, to rent from Wairika, correct?
Convenient for who?
You.
No.
In terms of picking up the car, it wouldn't have been convenient?
No.
There was
Well,
a
Wairika, you
reason.
told us, was a small town, right?
Yes.
And you indicated that everybody sort of knows everybody there, right?
That's pretty much the case.
And the other thing that you told us about Wairika was that people know everybody else's business there, right?
Usually.
Right. And in fact, one of the examples that you gave us of where people in Wairika know what's going on was the example when you were 17 and you went to, or you skipped a class. Do you remember telling us that?
Yes.
It was a history exam that you had to prepare for, right?
That's right.
And you indicated that you went somewhere in the car and you were studying, right?
Yes.
And while you were studying, your father found you, right?
Yes.
And one of the explanations or reasons that you gave for that was that Wairika is a very small town, right?
I don't remember giving that explanation because that's not why he found me.
Well, you indicated that you don't know how he found you, right?
I knew how he found me.
Well, that's not what you told us on direct examination.
Oh, I mean, I knew why he went to go looking for me. How he found me was he was just driving around. I'm sorry.
Ma'am, that's not what you told us on direct examination, right?
I don't remember. That's
Again, do you have problems remembering what you just told us less than a couple of weeks ago?
occasionally, I guess.
And in this particular case, you're having trouble remembering what you told us as to how your father found you, right?
I'm having trouble with how you're characterizing it, I think.
Well, again, we're going to get into this word exchange issue, but my question to you is, do you remember telling us on direct examination that Wairika is a small town and that's part of the reason or how your father found you? Do you remember telling us that?
Yes.
And so Wairika in 2008 is not much bigger than it was in 1997 or 1998 when this happened, right?
No, I think it's about 1,000 more in population.
Right. It's only 1,000 more in population. In other words, it's not a town.
It's almost as though Jodie thinks that this is a game where she wins if she can get away with not answering yes or no to questions. If she's able somehow to give some extra information or some nuance in an answer, that is some kind of small victory.
Town that's exploding in terms of population, right?
Yes.
It is or it is not.
Yes, that's right. I'm sorry.
And so that in people in Wairika, if somebody does something, more likely than not, they may end up meeting somebody that they know, right? Overall.
Yes.
So, for example, if you went to one of the two or either of the two car rental agencies that are there in Wairika, somebody may have been able to know or talk about it later if they were asked
Yeah, Jodie is the OG of psychos, isn't she?
about it, correct?
Perhaps people wouldn't know me though because I hadn't lived there for 10, 15 years.
But they may have, right?
Some, a few
Because
high school
again-
friends or something.
Again, it's not a very large town, right?
Yes.
And in fact, what's the population is what, 11,000?
I think it's 7,000.
7,000?
Something, yeah.
And you, at the time, back in June 2nd of 2008, you were working, right?
Yes.
And where you were in this town, there aren't that many bars, right?
I think there are like 5 or 6 bars.
Right. And there isn't one called Margaritaville, right?
That sounds crazy, Foxy. Makes no sense. What case is that?
No, there's not.
You worked at Casa Ramos, right?
Yes.
And you had some time off, didn't you?
Yes.
And this was going to be part of your vacation, right?
Road trip, yes.
The road trip was your vacation, right?
It was partially vacation, partially a business trip.
And when you say partially business trip, what you're saying is, for example, that if you went to buy gas, that's something that could be deductible, correct?
If it was for the business purpose, yes, it would be deductible.
Sure. And in fact, since you were going to go to Utah, going to a gas station, it would make sense to save the receipts so that you could then deduct them from your income taxes, right?
That's right.
And in this particular case, it wouldn't matter whether or not you paid cash or you paid with a credit card, right?
It wouldn't matter for tax purposes. No.
Right, as long as you had the receipts, right?
Yes.
And in this case, so you did pay at least attention to the receipts that you got, for example, from the gas station, right?
What do you mean by pay attention?
Kept them.
Yeah, I throwed everything in a shoebox.
Right, you threw everything in the shoebox, everything related to this trip, right?
Yes.
All of the receipts from this trip were thrown in this shoebox that we've seen previously, right?
No, probably not all, but just whatever was left over in my wallet.
Well, but you were trying to pay attention to keep the receipts.
It's getting there, Irish. It's getting there.
Right?
Somewhat. I'm very disorganized, but that's kind of my effort. Yeah.
Well, no, that's what you were attempting to do, right?
Yes.
And in fact, you did save some of the receipts involved with this particular trip, right?
Yes.
And so you're in Wairika and you decide instead to rent a car from Redding, California, right?
Yes.
And that's south of Wairika, correct?
Yes, on my way.
And it is on the way, but it is south, correct?
Yes.
And it's what, 90 miles away?
I think it's 99 miles.
So in terms of travel, we're talking about what? Close to 2 hours?
Maybe just under 2 hours, I think.
And on this particular day that you left, on June 2nd of 2008, you left the house around 5 o'clock in the morning, something like that, right?
Yeah, I think so. It was very early in the morning.
Well, you were at the Redding airport by 8 o'clock, weren't you?
Yes.
And so did you get there before 8 o'clock and just wait around, or did you get there at about the same, at that time?
I don't remember waiting. Well, I waited a little bit because there was a line, but not waiting for them to open.
And somebody was with you, correct?
Yes.
A guy was with you, right?
I can't remember if it was my brother's neighbor or my sister-in-law, but I think it was my sister-in-law. So either one of them dropped me off and picked me up or vice versa.
So when you're saying that they dropped you off and picked you up, what you're saying is that they did not get out of the car that took you to the Redding airport, correct?
I don't remember.
You don't remember whether or not they went up to the counter with you.
I think I was alone.
So you were here when Mr. Colombo testified, correct, as to whether or not you were accompanied, correct?
Yes.
And so what time did you arrive at this would be your sister's house, right?
Yes.
What time did you get there?
Before renting the car, you mean?
Yes, that was the only time that you got there on June 2nd, correct?
No, I got there with the rental car afterward and
Pardon?
took a nap. No, I went back to her house.
All right, the first time before you rented the car.
In the morning. I don't remember the exact time.
So it would have been, and they knew you were coming, correct?
Yes.
And so they were ready to then take you down to the airport, right?
Yes.
And they dropped you off and then you went to pick up the car, right?
I believe they did, yes.
And one of the things that happened is that you initially were given a car or rented a car by Mr. Colombo, correct?
Yes.
And the car that he offered you initially was red, right? And you told him
Yes.
that you didn't want the red car, right?
That's right.
And the reason that you told him that you didn't want the red car was because it would call attention to it would stand out more, correct?
No.
Well, didn't you tell him that you did want to exchange the car though, right?
Yes.
And you told him that red is a color that police officers sort of focus on. Do you remember telling him that? Is that yes or no?
I'm trying to remember. I don't think I worded it that way.
So you did give him a reason why you didn't want that car, right?
Yeah.
And part of it.
Oh, okay, Foxy, you're in the UK as well. Right, so that case was obviously in the UK. Yeah, I was wondering when you said Crime Watch. We're just way too lenient over here. Um, it happened in Shepherd's Bush. All right, okay, Death of a Gentleman. All right, I'll check that out. That's crazy.
It had to do with the color, right?
Yes.
You didn't want the color red,
Yes.
correct? The color red seems to stand out, doesn't it?
I don't know. I just heard they get more tickets.
Right, and so it had to do with the police department, right? You did not want to stand out, and that's why you wanted a different color, correct?
Not the police department because I'd be on the freeway. I just didn't want to get tickets, and I
Well,
heard they get more tickets.
Who do you think gets traffic citations then?
On the freeways in California, it's the California Highway Patrol.
That's police, aren't they?
I don't think they're police. I think they're law enforcement, but not categorized as police, not to my knowledge anyway.
So if there's a crime, you're saying that the California Highway Patrol doesn't respond to them?
She's calm at the moment because she's quite happy with how it's going so far. That's gonna change rather soon.
They respond as well as maybe the sheriff's office or something. Depends on the district, I would imagine.
Right, and so you were afraid that police, whether it includes the California Highway Patrol or somebody driving down the street, that they would focus in on your car because you had heard that police get more tickets involving a red car, correct?
Afraid? No, I wasn't afraid. I just didn't want to shell out more money for tickets.
Right. So afraid may not be the word that you like. What word would you like? Concerned?
I don't know.
Well, no, you're the one that said afraid wasn't the right word. Why don't you tell me what word you would use in describing your reluctance in taking a red car?
It was motivated by financial frugality.
Well, you're telling us then that the red car was cheaper to rent than the white car.
No, in theory, I would be less likely to get a speeding ticket and shell out hundreds of dollars if I were not in a red car.
So what you're saying is the red car, in your view, because of the color, stands out more to police departments, whether they be California Highway Patrol, whether they be the Salinas Police Department, whether they be the Redding Police Department, right?
I'd be speculating, but I guess that's why they get more tickets. I don't know.
Well, no, I don't want you to guess because I want you to tell us what you were thinking at the time because you were the one that made this request involving the red car.
Well, my thought is that drivers of red cars tend to drive faster. They get more tickets. That's just what I've always been told.
Right. But that's what other drivers do. You suppose.
Hands up in chat, anyone that's got a red car. Can you verify this? Do you tend to drive faster than the rest of us law-abiding citizens on the road? Hands up, red car drivers.
Supposedly, we're going to adhere to the speed limit or within 10 miles of it, right?
Usually, I tried.
Right, so.
Welcome, Sarah. How are you? She loves playing the game of arguing semantics. I know. Yeah. She's one of these people, just like Amber Heard, that and like Sarah Boone. I don't know if you've seen the Sarah Boone case that I covered. She's one of these kind of people that have been used to having the last word in life, you know? And certainly Amber Heard is used to that.
If you do that, then you really shouldn't have too much of a concern about a traffic citation then, right?
That's not right. I've been cited before when the radar was off.
And how many times have you been cited before for speeding, ma'am, when your speed was over 10 miles an hour, over the speed limit?
Several times.
Give me one time.
One time I was driving on Highway 1 south of Carmel, or just entering Carmel Highlands, and I was going, I think, 60 something.
Yeah, and this is the arrogance of Jodie that she actually presented herself to law enforcement up in Arizona prior to her getting called in. she believed that she was going to be able to, deal with this, from inside, if you know what I mean, by keeping herself close to the case and keeping herself abreast of the case. She surmised that she was going to be able to do that. That's the ego that she had. Crazy.
Something in a 50, and I got pulled over, and he clocked me at, he said 79.
Let me stop you. You said you were going 60-something in a 50-mile-per-hour zone, right?
Yes.
That means
I did, Melanie, yeah. There's a little bit more footage of the morning after the morning after the incident with Sarah Boone, when the law enforcement first arrive on her doorstep, which is quite interesting. So I might do a live on that. You're welcome to come on again, Melanie. Obviously, you're quite knowledgeable about the case as well, and we've covered it, haven't we? So if you would like to do that, I might do that at some point. I think Cheryl and Nuff Nuff are both getting interested in that case as well. So it'll be good to see if they would like to come up on panel to discuss it, because it's looking like the trial has to be coming up soon. It's got to be, unless there's going to be some plea deal. So yeah, let me know what you think about that, Melanie. Of course. Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll get that. I'll fire you an email then, and we'll get something arranged.
you were going over the 10-mile issue that I just presented to you.
Yes.
So in other words, what I'm asking you, can you give me an example where you were driving either the speed limit or within 9 miles of the speed limit where you were given a ticket?
We are going to take the
I know, Sarah, right? A certain creator. Let's compare to Amber Heard. Much could be discussed there. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And Sarah, have you heard the latest news as well? That Amber Heard is going to do a tell-all book. I'm sure none of our jaws are hitting the floor on that one. She knows that she has a certain window of time to make all her moves, but she's going to have one hell of a good lawyer to verify that book before it goes to press, if she's not to have her ass in court again. But that perhaps is what she wants, you know? To have Johnny in the same building again. I wouldn't be surprised.
noon recess at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, please be back in the designated area at 1:25. Please remember the
Couldn't agree
admission
more,
is
Sarah.
closed.
Couldn't agree more.
Please be seated. The record will show the jury has left the court.
No, Foxy, she's not on trial yet. It keeps getting postponed, and I'm just worried that the reason it's getting postponed is because there's going to be some plea deal that they're arguing. I'd love to see that one go to trial because I'm so interested to see how the defense team go about that. In terms of the fact that I think that she's been overcharged with second-degree murder. I think it should be manslaughter, but a lot of people would argue with me on that. And it kind of comes down to interpretation of the law, because it's obviously different in every state. But that would be interesting. This is the second part
Wife,
here.
correct?
Yes.
And that was more to your liking because of this issue involving the traffic citations, correct?
Yes.
And this car had a capacity of over 12 gallons per tank full, correct?
It was 10 or 12. I don't remember.
Well,
I had a look as well, Melanie. I can't find anything.
237.018. Do you remember?
I'm kind of relying on a mentor lawyer. He seems to be the quickest with any news on that.
Filling up with gas in Winnemucca, Nevada.
I remember running out of gas in Nevada, and
When you say that you ran out of gas, there was absolutely no gas.
When you say the three of them, do you mean a particular creator, Jodie and Amber Heard? Sarah?
gas in your car, or you were just running low?
It was, the gas light was on, so.
When you say that the gas light was on, doesn't mean that you're not moving. It means that you are low on gasoline, correct?
Yeah, it was kind of below, below
Are you
the-
saying that that's what
Yeah, Irish, I believe that is the mitigating factor is obviously her intoxication. Um, her culpability is limited, I think, because of that. It's it's difficult because she is so obviously trying to be cruel and torturous towards him in that video that she takes. But I believe she obviously did not intend for him to die. So it comes down to the interpretation of the law. Because under second degree in Florida, um, it states that I can't remember the exact wording, but it's to do with acting with without um, with liability towards life, essentially. Yeah, Melanie thinks it should be second degree, and I think it should be manslaughter. Okay, I got you, Sarah. I got you. It could be used as a teaching tool. How not to get caught up in their derailment during their testimonies. Yeah.
where it happened in Winnemucca, Nevada?
No, I was probably, I think he said I was 15 or 20 miles from there.
And you were able to make it to Winnemucca, correct?
No, I pulled over.
And you pulled over and did what?
I went in and asked the guy where the nearest gas station is. He said it's about 15 miles. I think he said 15 miles further. I didn't think I would make it on E, so I went and started putting gas in the car, and he came out and assisted me.
And you were putting gas from what?
From one of the gas cans.
All right. And let's just take a look at this exhibit right here. And it indicates that it's your name, right?
Yes.
It's from Winnemucca, right?
Yes.
And it indicates that the amount that you
There's the paneling. Don't be shy, guys. Don't be shy.
purchased was 12.175 gallons, right?
Yes,
And you paid $49.91, correct?
that's right.
And this issue involving you running out of gas, that's not something that you told us on direct examination, correct? Yes or
No, I was not.
And so you have this car that has at least a capacity of 12 gallons, correct?
Approach.
Now, with regard to Winnemucca, you filled up your car with gas, didn't you?
Yes, I put gas in it.
All the way till it was full, right?
I probably, because I usually filled up until the
Yes or
nozzle
no?
clicked.
Yes or no? In Winnemucca, did you fill it up with gas?
I put gas in it. I probably filled it up.
So you're saying that you're not sure if you filled it up all the way with gas then, right?
That's right.
But you did make a purchase in Winnemucca pursuant to Exhibit 237.018, in which 12.175 gallons were purchased by you, right?
Yes,
And so it could be that the tank was 15 gallons of gas, right?
Overruled, you may answer.
Right?
that's possible.
But at least we know that this gas tank could hold at least 12.175 gallons of gas, right?
Right.
And before you went on this trip, it started on June 2nd of 2008, correct?
Yes.
Started around 5 o'clock in the morning, correct?
It was early in the mornings, around that time.
Because you were at Reading at 8 a.m., correct?
Yes.
Well, we saw the receipts. Were you here when the receipts were shown of you renting the car at approximately 8:01?
Yes, I was here.
And so if it takes you 1 to 2 hours to drive down there, that would mean you would have to get up pretty.
Okay, I think this is a good point in the trial for me just to play a little bit of a Juan Martinez interview that he did after this, just so you can get a insight into his thinking here. The question here: how did you use the gas cans to corner Jodie Arias? Get the volume up.
After Jodie Arias claimed that she had been attacked by Travis and that she had been forced to kill him in self-defense, I started looking through the rest of the documents that I had, and I came across a report that indicated that she had called an ex-boyfriend shortly before the trip asking to borrow 2 gas cans. It seemed an innocuous enough request, but to me, it seemed that California has enough gas stations so that uh, carrying or wanting to borrow gas cans seemed to have another meaning to it or have another purpose for her. As I looked further into the case, I came across a Walmart receipt. And in that Walmart receipt, I was able to find that she had actually bought a third gas can, so that at her disposal, she had 3 5-gallon gas cans for a total of 15 gallons. As I looked further into the case, I realized that the reason that she wanted this extra gasoline, this extra 15 gallons, was so that she could make her way through the Arizona desert from California without having to stop at a gas station. So there would be no record of her ever being here in Arizona. There would be no videotape and there would be no receipts because she had the gasoline that she needed to make the trip. When I confronted her with the 2 gas cans that she had borrowed from the ex-boyfriend, she had already heard the ex-boyfriend testify and tell me that he had lent her those 2 gas cans. So she had some time to prepare an answer for that. What she didn't know was that I had already gone and checked with Walmart and found that she had actually borrowed a third gas can. So at the latest opportunity, when she was still testifying, I asked her, why is it then that if you claim that you only had 2 gas cans, why is it that you filled up 3 gas cans in Salt Lake City? In her face, for probably the only time throughout the trial, there was a look that indicated that she was caught, that somehow she finally, for one thing, didn't have an answer. After a pause, she then sort of turned, answered my question, and said, well, I was never in Salt Lake City, which I knew wasn't true because I had the receipts to prove it.
And that is how he caught her, rather beautifully. She had no idea that he had the receipt of the third gas can.
Early, right?
Yes.
And so you got up pretty early, you drove down to Reading, but in anticipation of that, you actually called somebody by the name of Daryl Brewer, right?
Yeah, and I'm sorry I didn't get up early. I was up all night. So.
Pardon?
You said I got up early. I just wanted to make that clear. I was up all night. So.
Okay, so what you're saying is you didn't sleep that night, right?
I didn't sleep that night, no.
Okay. So, but you did, in anticipation of this trip, contact an old boyfriend, right?
Yes.
And that would be Daryl Brewer, right?
Yes.
You made a number of telephone calls to him, correct?
Probably.
And when you say probably, it means that you're not sure, right?
I'm not sure, no.
So you at least made 2 calls to him though, right?
If that's what my phone records reflect, then that would be right.
I'm asking what your memory reflects.
I don't remember actually calling him before leaving on my trip.
So you have no idea as to whether or not you even called him before you went on the trip then, right?
I don't recall. Well, of course I called him before the trip, but I don't know how soon before the trip.
Hey, with respect, mostly. It's Suzanne, isn't it? If we're talking stabs and her penalty, she's where she belongs. Her appeals fell through. I've been on Stabby's case for nearly 10 years. She made it a circus. She sure did, and when she knew it was game over, she took a lot of pleasure in articulating just exactly how she slit Travis's throat, and she did that for the family to hear in court. That was her last dying insult.
So you don't remember whether or not it was in May then, is that what you're saying?
I did talk to him in May.
And it was toward the end of May, correct?
Probably.
And when you keep saying probably, it means that you're not sure, but that you do not deny that you made a call, right?
That's right.
And so you made this call with,
God, I didn't hear about that. Oh my God. That's bizarre.
to him at the end of May, and you asked him whether or not he had any spare gas cans for you to use, right?
That sounds right.
No, I'm not asking what sounds right. Is that what you did?
Okay, Jackie, did you just find that out, did you? Pre-trial on the 15th of July and the trial set for the 25th. Okay, that's great. If you can let us know where you sourced that from, that'd be great.
I think I did, because he's the one I ended up borrowing them from.
Well, ma'am, are you having trouble again with your memory with regard to events then?
Yeah, because there were a few different,
So the answer is yes. You are having trouble with your memory.
with that question.
Well, are you having trouble? It's not the only question that you've had trouble with. Are you having trouble with the memory of the events leading up to your trip?
Leading up to, yeah, I felt
Okay.
a little bit.
And you would agree then that the events leading up to your trip were probably the end of May, and the murder was, or the killing was on June 4th of 2008. So are you saying that that whole period you're having problems with your memory, or is it just the end of May?
Well, there are some things I recall and some things I don't.
So my question is, are you having trouble with both or just the end of May?
I'd say my whole life is like that, so both.
So you're saying that you're having trouble remembering everything or events throughout your life. Is that what you're saying?
Some things, not everything.
Busted.
And sometimes
Indeed.
you know what you can remember very well, and sometimes you can't. Is that what you're saying?
You mean can't at all or can't remember well?
Can't remember. Both well or at all?
Yeah,
You tell me.
all of the above.
And so at the end of May, then, you're saying that you really don't remember whether or not you made a telephone call to Mr. Brewer. Is that what you're saying?
I don't remember specifically, but I know I called him at one point.
All right. And you did call him because you wanted to talk to him about some gas cans, right?
That wasn't the purpose of the call.
Damn, you seem to have a lot of good info on us with respect. Interesting.
Well, that was what was discussed during that call.
I hadn't
Correct?
heard any of that.
I think so, yes.
You're saying you think so? Yes, correct? That's
Yes.
what you're saying. And so one of the things that you told him in discussing these gas cans was that you were going to take a trip, right?
Yes.
And that the purpose for the gas cans was that you could put gas in them, right?
Yes.
And the other thing that you told him was that the trip that you were going to make was going to be to Mesa, Arizona, right?
Yeah, there's something darkly fascinating about Jodie, isn't there? Darkly fascinating.
Right?
No.
You were here when he testified, correct?
Yes.
And he's somebody that you've had I guess, a long-term relationship with, correct?
Yes. About 4 years.
Pardon?
About 4 years we were in a relationship.
Right, and then even after.
I've heard a lot of people talking about this present case, Danielle Redlick. I've not seen anything about it, but I know a lot of people are talking about it. She killed her husband and waited 11 hours before calling 911. Damn, I need to check that out.
After that, you have had, if not a close friendship, you've had a friendship after.
Hello again,
the
Cheryl.
two of you split, correct?
It was more distant, but it was still a friendship.
Sure, and in fact, you felt comfortable, you still remembered his number, right? Telephone number, right?
Yes.
And you felt comfortable enough to ask him for a favor, right?
Certain favors, yes.
Well, that particular favor, you felt comfortable in asking him for that, right?
Which one? The gas cans?
Well, which other favor are we talking about?
I get the feeling that through her life, Jodie was pretty good at getting favors done for herself, don't you?
Are there more than one favor here that we've talked about?
I want to know what you're talking about.
No, I'm asking you. Do you remember that we started talking about gas cans? Do you remember that?
Yes.
That we've talked of nothing else other than gas cans so far.
Isn't Juan Martinez just so good? It's just so refreshing to hear his combative style. You just know, you can feel it's personal for him, and it was personal. He was the first investigator on the scene. It was his case from day one. You know, it meant a lot to him, and that really comes across. Irish, you followed the Danielle Redlick case, yeah, and you can't believe it was not guilty. You were shocked. Yeah, that's a narrative I'm getting whenever I hear about this case. I'll need to look up, definitely.
Is there anything else that you believe that we've talked about?
I wasn't sure, that's why I asked.
Ma'am, is there anything else that we have talked about?
She's
I'm not sure, that's why
so
I asked.
smug.
I'm asking you, is there anything else that has been posed to you other than this gas can issue involving Mr. Brewer?
Yes.
Objection, ask and answer the badgering.
Sustained.
Now, you have this conversation with him involving the gas cans. It is more than one conversation, isn't it?
I don't remember.
And there could be more than one conversation, is what you're telling us, right?
Yes.
And are you saying you did not tell him that you were going to go to Mesa?
Cheryl knows I'm into the Arias case. I've even promised the powers that be when I die, I'm waiting on the other side for Stabby. She's not going to heaven. I already know I'm going to hell. She's coming with me. Well, I assume I'm speaking for the majority that I'm happy to hear that. I'm sure you won't be in hell though.
When you spoke to him.
That's right, I told him after.
I'm asking you, the question is this, isn't it true that before you went on the trip, you told him you were going to Mesa?
It's intriguing to watch, Sarah, isn't it? Intriguing. I just cannot believe she allowed herself to get sucked so deeply into the semantic jarring, you know? It just, she must have assumed it was good for her, you know? She must have assumed that the jury would credit her with being able to compete with Juan. It's the only reason, unless she just lost herself, you know, in the whole context of what was the fact that she was sitting in court with the threat of the death penalty.
No, that is not true.
All right. Isn't it true that as part of one or another conversation that you had, you told him that you were going to go to Arizona to visit some friends?
No, I said Utah.
You didn't. I'm asking you whether or not it's true that you told him that you were going to Mesa to visit some friends before you took the trip.
No, I said Utah.
I'm not asking you what you said, am I?
Overruled.
Yeah, I think you are.
You're thinking, my question to you is asking you what you told them. Is that what you think it is? Whether or not you told them that you were going to go to Utah? Do you think that that's what the question was?
No.
The question was, isn't it true, ma'am, that you discussed with Mr. Brewer before the trip that you took that you needed the gas cans to go and visit friends in Mesa, Arizona? What is your answer to that?
The answer is no, I told him Utah.
And I'm asking you whether or not you think I'm asking you what you told him. Am I asking you what you told him?
That's kind of my interpretation of it. It's a yes or no question.
It is a yes or no question, isn't it?
And I answered no 3 times, yes.
And you also
Whoa.
added something 3 times, didn't you?
Yes, the truth.
Am I asking you whether you're telling the truth?
You have asked me that.
Am I asking you right now if you're telling the truth?
I don't know, are you?
Well, have you heard that question prior to you saying that?
Yes.
You heard that question immediately before I'm telling the truth. The
They're in full battle right now. It's got to that stage. Their swords are unsheathed.
prosecutor asking you if you were telling the truth, you heard the prosecutor say that.
Not immediately.
Pardon?
Not immediately.
So the answer is yes or no. Did you hear the question immediately before you gave the answer that you were telling the truth?
No, not immediately.
So you did have these conversations with Mr. Brewer and you decided to get the gas cans. Why don't you just go and buy some gas cans?
They were expensive.
And when you say they were expensive, how much is a gas can did you get?
I don't remember, but it wasn't in my budget for my travels.
And you wanted 2 of them, right?
I don't know, I guess, whatever he had.
So if you would have had 6, you would have taken 6?
No, they wouldn't have fit.
And these gas cans, when you picked them up, where did you put them?
In the trunk,
In the back?
yes.
So you rented this car, and this car had some floor mats, correct?
No, it did not.
So then you get into this car, and you pick it up, you go back to sleep, right?
Yes, back at my brother's house.
I didn't ask you where, did I?
No,
I asked you if you went back to sleep, right?
yes,
So you went back to sleep, and at some point, you then started to go on your trip for reals, right?
okay, yeah.
All right, and about what time was that?
I want to say late morning, but I'm not too sure.
And you then drove south till you got to the Monterey, California area, correct?
I stopped again and slept, and then continued driving south.
What did you say?
I stopped again and slept, and then I continued driving south.
Did anybody ask you whether or not you slept?
Well, you just asked me.
I asked you whether or not you slept. Is that what my question was?
Yes, you asked if I went to sleep.
No, I asked you when you started your trip, did you make it to Monterey, California? Do you remember me asking you that?
I remember you asking something like that, but not worded that way.
When you say something like that, again, it seems that you have a problem with your memory. Do you have a problem with your memory today?
Not in this particular case.
Okay, so after you woke up, after sleeping at your sister's house, did you begin your trip?
Yes,
And did you eventually make it to the Monterey, California area?
It's quite possible with respect.
yes.
I wouldn't be
And
surprised.
What time did you get there?
It was very, very late. I think it was.
Yeah, me too, Sarah. What did you think of Camille? I was a little worried after the very first day of her cross-examination of Amber. To me, I think Amber kind of was successful during the first day of Camille's cross-examination, but Camille eventually won the battle, I think, after that, thankfully. But I'll be interested to hear what you thought about her performance.
It was even the 3rd in the morning because we had stopped in Santa Cruz first.
So you got there on the 3rd, you believe, but in any event, it was late, correct?
Yeah, it was past midnight, I think, by the time we got to Monterey.
And so in terms of miles, how many miles are we talking about?
From where to where?
From the place that you left your sister to Monterey, wherever it is that you went, and you arrived around midnight or after, or in the early morning hours of June 3rd.
Well, I'm not particularly sure. I'd say somewhere in the ballpark of 500 miles.
And so,
I know more by hours, not miles.
okay, how many hours then?
From Redding to Santa Cruz, it was approximately 6.5 to 7 hours.
And in Santa
Yeah,
Cruz, did you meet
agreed, Sarah.
Yes,
And that's where you met Mr. McCartney, correct?
yes, and his roommate.
And did I ask you again if you met his roommate?
You asked if I met anybody.
No, I asked you if you met Mr. McCartney. Do you remember that question?
Yes, and I answered yes.
And so you met Mr. McCartney, and you spent the night at a place where he was living, right?
Yes.
She just cannot stop with her smartness and smugness. She just can't do it. She's not capable.
And what time did you get up the next morning?
I don't remember, but it would have been in the morning.
I understand it was the morning. Would it have been really early, or would it not be so early in the morning?
It would have been before Jack had to go to school, so whatever time that was, it couldn't have been too late.
What time did Jack have to go to school?
I don't remember.
And so, did you have plans already to meet up with Mr. McCartney, or is it a situation where you got on the phone on the road, called him up, and said, hey, I'm coming down there, can we meet?
It was definitely beforehand because I was going to crash there.
So when did you speak to him beforehand? Was it a week or so before? Was it days before you left? What was it?
I don't know. We spoke here and there. I don't know.
All right, and did Mr. McCartney go with you the next morning to meet with Mr. Brewer?
No,
So you did go over to Mr. Brewer's house, and one of the reasons that you went over was to talk to or see Jack, the son, right?
that was one of the reasons.
And you also had breakfast there, correct?
Yes.
And you also checked your email there, correct?
I think it was my MySpace
Pardon?
email. Yeah, what was my MySpace account? I
Well,
think I
when you
checked.
say that you checked your MySpace account, is your email included in the MySpace account?
There is an email system, but not my main email.
I'm asking if you checked when you checked your MySpace account, did you check any email in the MySpace account?
I don't remember.
Did you check, you mentioned that you had another email system. Did you check that other email system?
I don't remember, probably not. I think it was just MySpace.
And what was the purpose for checking that, the MySpace account?
Hadn't done it in a few days, so.
And so you check that, and then
Do we all remember MySpace, guys? It seems like an age ago, doesn't it? MySpace.
at some point, you get some gas cans, right?
Yes.
And when in this whole sequence of events do you get the gas cans?
Sometime while I was visiting with him. I don't remember how it happened.
Was it before or after Jack left for school?
I don't remember.
And what color were the gas cans?
They were red
And where did you put them?
in the trunk.
And that would be in the back, correct?
Yes,
Where was your luggage?
in the trunk.
Same place with the same area as the gas cans?
Yes.
And how much time do you spend there with Mr. Brewer?
I don't know. I think it was somewhere like a half hour, it felt like. I don't really remember.
And then you leave, right?
Yes,
But you come back again, right?
yes,
To return a remote, right?
right.
What kind of remote are you returning?
It was for either his TV or his DVD player, I think.
How is it that it found its way into your car?
I don't know. I think that
Well,
because-
don't speculate. You don't know, right?
No, it was already with him. I drove away with it on accident. I don't know how I got it.
All right. And then after you returned it, you drove to Salinas, right?
Yes.
And in Salinas, you did a number of things, right?
Not really. I just did a few things.
Pardon?
I just did a few things.
Right. You did your nails, right?
Yes.
And you said it took quite a while, right?
I had to wait for a while. Yes.
In other words, the doing of the nails didn't take a long time. The fact that you probably didn't have an appointment is what took some time, right?
Yes. There are no appointments there.
And then you left Salinas and continued your trip, right? And this would be on the 3rd, right?
That's correct.
About what time was it?
It was afternoon, but I don't know what time.
You told us about the gas cans from Mr. Brewer, right?
That's right.
But you forgot to tell us something else, didn't you?
You haven't asked me yet.
Well, isn't it true that there was more than 2 gas cans involved in it, right?
Yes.
And you testified on direct examination involving the gas cans, didn't you?
Yes.
And you never testified about a 3rd gas can, did you?
No.
And this 3rd gas can, you actually bought it in Salinas, didn't you?
Yes.
And you bought it from Walmart, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And not only do you have 2 5-gallon gas cans, you have another gas can. What's the capacity of this one?
It was the same size. No, I think it was, I don't know. It was the same size, I think.
You think it was, so now you have a capacity of 15 gallons, right?
At that moment, I did.
Well, you're saying like at that moment, did the size of these gas cans change so that it would go from a 15-gallon capacity down to a lesser capacity?
Sustaining the objection.
With regard to, you keep saying that at that point you had that capacity. Was there something involving these gas cans that would not allow you to fill them up to their capacity later on?
Yes, there was.
And what is that?
I returned the gas can.
You returned it back, right?
Yes.
So that you now have a capacity of still 10 gallons, right?
Yes,
Maximum, right?
yes.
So then why is it, ma'am,
It's unraveling now.
that when you go to the ARCO, you fill up with gas, you remember that?
Yes.
And then you go inside and exhibit number 237.012, do you see that there?
Yes.
That's a capacity of 10 gallons, right? Or approximately, it's 9.5494 gallons, right?
Yes.
And then 237.013, it's 2.77 gallons, right?
Where does it say that? Oh, yeah, I see that.
So you're saying that these gas cans then have a larger capacity now?
I don't know what the capacity was.
Well, you remember Mr. Brewer saying they were 5-gallon gas cans, right?
I don't know if he said that or not.
You were here when he testified, right?
I was physically here, yes. Sometimes I space out.
Pardon?
I was physically here, yes. Sometimes I space out.
And so you're saying that throughout the trial, you may have spaced out and not paid attention to what's going on?
During other people's testimony, sometimes my mind wanders.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
And you don't remember then specifically what Mr. Brewer may have said. Is that what you're saying?
I remember some things he said. Almost all.
But not everything.
Not every single thing.
Well, 237.011. Do you see that it says ARCO and it's in Pasadena?
Yes.
Do you see the address there?
Yes.
What's the address? Read it for me.
3706 East Foothill Boulevard.
Building up to the coup de grace here, guys.
And the city and state?
Pasadena, California, 92553.
And it does talk about a debit account. You see that?
Yes.
Talks about a date of June 3rd, 2008, right?
Yes.
And a time of 8:42 p.m., right?
Yes.
And then it talks about being at pump number 2. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then it talks about the amount of gallons that are involved, right?
Yes.
8.301 gallons. And there's the price there, right?
Yes.
That is for you filling up the car, isn't it?
I don't know.
Well, you were there though, right?
Yes.
And this is first in the sequence at 8:42 p.m., right?
Yes.
And you don't know whether or not this is part of filling up the car with gas then?
Hear the hesitation?
I don't remember what order I filled
All
out.
right, well, you remember that we were talking about 2 5-gallon gas cans, right?
Yes,
5 plus 5 is 10, right?
that's right.
This is 8.301. Do you see that?
Yes.
So this is not the capacity, if you will, of the up to 10 gallons for those 2 gas cans, correct?
It has that capacity, so that's not correct. It's not the maximum capacity.
No, it isn't, right? So
That's
there's no reason to believe that this could be the gas cans. If you're going to take these gas cans, presumably you're going to fill them up to the top, right?
Restate your question.
Why you were taking those gas cans for a reason, right?
Yes.
And that was to have extra gas, right?
Originally it was. so
Yes
that
or no? Was it to have extra gas available to you?
At one point, yes. At another point, no.
Well, and if you want to have extra gas available to you, don't you want to have the maximum amount?
I guess.
Well, no, you were driving. You're the one that asked to borrow these gas cans. If you have 5, let's just say 10 gallons of space available, and you want to make sure that you have enough gas, wouldn't you fill it up to approximately 10 gallons?
I don't know.
Ma'am,
Yeah, exactly, Sarah. This in the SIM card in the camera.
what's going on is that exhibit 237.001 is you filling up that Ford Focus with gas, isn't it?
I don't remember what order I filled up.
And this was at 8:42 p.m., right?
Yes.
and you went and you pumped your own gas, didn't you?
Yes.
And then and you paid with a debit card. Do you see that?
Yes.
You had a MasterCard back then, right?
I don't remember what it was, MasterCard or Visa.
But you paid for that with a credit card or Visa or MasterCard, whatever it was, right?
Yes.
With regard to the gas that you purchased inside, which is 237.012, you paid cash, right?
That's right.
And cash is harder to track in terms of sales than a credit transaction. Wouldn't you agree?
Not if you save the receipt.
Not if you save your receipt. What if you don't?
It's rather exquisite how little 2-inch rectangular pieces of paper with some ink on it can help condemn a killer. It's rather delicious. Probably the most famous receipts of all time.
Save your receipt, ma'am. Wouldn't you agree that a cash transaction is harder to keep track of than a credit transaction?
Yes, I would agree with that.
And in this case, you initially said, I want to pay $40, right?
Yes.
And then it's the amount of gallons that you got for that was 9.594 gallons, correct?
Yes.
And that was the $40, right?
Yes.
Do you see the time there?
That would be 10:53.
Well, how about 846.50? If you see the 2046.50, wouldn't that be 846.50?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. That's correct.
And that is 4 minutes after the transaction and 237.001. Do you see that?
Yes. Wait, what was the other time? I'm sorry.
It's 8:42.
Okay.
You see that?
Yes.
846.50. Do you see that?
Yes. I was sorry. I was looking at the other time on top.
Do you see that right there?
Yes.
It's 8:46.50, right?
Okay.
So that's 4 minutes after the transaction. That's the debit transaction, right?
Yes.
And then you have 237.013. It's the same article, right?
Yes.
And this one is at what time?
This one is at, what time was it?
How about 8:53?
53, yes.
And that's 5 minutes later than the transaction involving the approximately 10 gallons of gas, right?
Yes.
And during that time, that 5 minutes, that would allow you to go from the inside out to your car again, wouldn't it? 5
Yes.
minutes. It was that close, correct?
Yes.
And the time span between exhibit 237.001, which is 8:42, to the next one, which is 8:46, which is 4 minutes, that would give you time to go back between the car and the register or inside the store, correct?
Yes.
And so now we know that at that particular gas station, you spent 237.011, I'm sorry. It's $35 there, right?
Yes.
And 6 cents, but let's leave the cents aside. And 237.012, that's $40. So far you spent $75 in gas, right?
Yes.
And then if you add from 237.013, if you add 9, because we're rounding up, you're now talking $84 in gas that you spent, right?
I don't know. I'm not good at math, but okay.
Assuming the math is correct,
Assuming the math is correct.
it's between $80 and $84 in gas that you spent, correct?
Yes.
And so you've now driven all the way down there, and one of the reasons that you told us on direct examination that you wanted these gas cans was that gas was cheaper in Arizona and Utah. Do you remember telling us that on direct?
No, I said Nevada and Utah.
All right, gas is cheaper in Nevada and Utah, right?
Yes.
You weren't filling up in Nevada or Utah, were you?
No.
You were filling up in California, right?
Yes.
Where the gas is as expensive there as it is probably throughout the state, right?
Yeah, with respect, I always enjoy a good debate. Yeah, feel free to drop the link in comments. Go for it. Sarah, I'd love to witness from inside her head, I don't know, from inside her mind. And to anyone that's maybe not familiar with this case or, just coming back to this after quite some time, the significance obviously of the fact that Juan is proven that she filled up 3 5-gallon gas cans prior to going up to Arizona is it shows that she had enough gas with her to avoid having to stop anywhere on the trip up to Arizona and back. So she was doing that to avoid detection through surveillance if she had to stop at any service station. And it's just another nail in the coffin that proves the premeditation and her determination not to be seen.
No.
Or well, it was expensive in California, isn't it?
More than Nevada and Utah, yes.
And so you had actually, and California is kind of a progressive state in the sense that it has gas stations almost everywhere, doesn't it?
Restate your question.
On your travels on that date, you went from the Monterey area down to Salinas. Any trouble seeing any gas stations there?
No.
From Salinas all the way down to Pasadena. Any problem seeing any gas stations there?
No.
So it seems that your fears about gas in California were not well founded then, right? There was gas in places that you were traveling in California, right?
I didn't have any fears in California then, so no.
You had fears somewhere else, correct?
Yes.
Arizona, for example, right?
No.
Well, you did end up going through Arizona, right?
Yes, I did.
And so presumably, is that where the fears were, in Arizona?
No, I've driven that highway many times. I knew where the gas stations were.
So you didn't really have a need for gas if you're going to drive through Arizona then, right?
No, that's right, yes.
Pardon?
That's right.
And you were telling us, though, that approximately every 150 to 170 miles, your car was running out of gas. Do you remember telling us that?
150 to 170 miles?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't remember saying that.
Well, do you remember that you said that you had problems with that your Ford Focus had problems with gas, that was using too much gas on direct examination?
I remember running out quickly, yes.
Well, you told us that this car, the Ford Focus, was using an inordinate amount of gas, correct?
No, that wasn't my thought.
Well,
it ran out of gas quickly.
you told us that from Pasadena, then you filled up at Desert Center, right?
Yes.
That's approximately 170 miles down the road, right?
I don't know.
Well, you drove it.
It sounds right.
Sustained, ask another question.
And after that, you then said that you drove out to Buckeye and you filled up there, right?
Yes.
That's approximately another 170 miles, right?
I guess.
Well, you did drive that, though. You
Yes,
did
I
tell
did.
us that, right?
Yes.
And you told us that both of those times you filled up, right?
Yes.
And you filled that car up with 12 gallons of gas approximately every time, right?
Whatever it would have been, I filled up, I think.
Well, if you were running low, we've already seen the capacity, then it would be approximately 12 gallons, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Sustained.
Ma'am, you said that you filled up in Winnemucca, right? And your car was low, ran out of gas, right?
It did not run out of gas. I was low.
Oh, so it didn't run out of gas, and yet you were able to put over 12 gallons worth of gas in Winnemucca, correct?
That's correct.
And so if you are running low on gas in Desert Center, that would mean that you would put approximately 12 gallons worth of gas, right?
Approximately.
And then from that point over to Buckeye, you said you put gas into the car again, right?
Yes, I did.
So that would mean that you would put another 12 gallons worth of gas in the car if it was running low. based, based on the previous computations.
Overruled, you may have.
If you base it on those computations, but I stopped in Buckeye because the Shell station there always had cheap gas.
I'm not asking you whether or not it had cheap gas, right? Am I?
No.
You remember that on direct examination, the way you processed this was that, oh, this car used an inordinate or a lot of gas. Do you remember telling us that portion?
Yes.
And that as a consequence of that, do you remember telling us that you stopped at Desert Center, right? And
Yes,
put gas in it.
I did.
And then you also said, and because of this problem that it was running low on gas, you also stopped in Buckeye, right? You told us that,
Yes,
right?
I did.
So if this car is running low on gas, that means that it's close to empty, right?
Yes.
And so that would mean that if it's close to empty, it would be around 12 gallons that you put at Desert Center inside the car tank, right?
Approximately.
Approximately. And then it would be another 12 gallons worth of gas there at Buckeye, right?
Presumably, yes.
Well, given the computations that we have going. And then you made your way over to Mesa, right?
Yes, I did.
And how long did it take you to get to Mesa?
That hour of the morning, not long because there was no traffic.
And how much gas did you use?
I don't know.
And all the while you have these gas cans full of gas, right?
Yes, I did.
And because you filled up in Pasadena, correct?
Yes.
And where did you put these gas cans?
They were in my trunk.
And again, in the back part of the trunk?
Yes.
And you maintain that this third gas can, that you did not have a third gas can then, right?
No, not at that time.
When you keep saying that at that time, I'm asking after Salinas, you did not have that gas can, right?
That's correct.
Take a look at 237.008. Do you see that? Do you see the receipt?
Yes.
And at the very bottom, it says 5G. That actually means 5 gallons, right?
Yes.
Carocarb is a type of gas can, correct?
Yes.
And it's 1296, right?
Yes.
Ma'am, at the time that you bought it, one of the things that you were telling us was that you were very financially strapped, for lack of a better phrase, right?
That's right.
So if you want to save on gas, which is on the price of gas, which is what you say is your ultimate goal, right?
At the time that I wanted gas cans, that was my ultimate goal.
So that was your ultimate goal at the time that you talked to Mr. Brewer, right?
That's correct.
So if you want to save on gas, why is it then that you're willing to pay $13 for a gas can, which would increase, if you will, the price of travel
Well,
by $13?
that wasn't a calculation that I made when I bought it. That's why I returned it.
Do you have the receipt that you took it back?
I didn't get a receipt.
So Walmart did not give you any documentation whatsoever when you took that gas can back.
I don't think so.
Well, I'm asking you just I just want to be as clear as we can about this. You believe that when you took that gas can back, Walmart did not give you any written document evidencing that or showing that?
I don't recall having to fill anything out or any documents regarding that, no.
You weren't even given a printout or anything at all, right?
I'm not saying that, I'm just saying I don't remember.
I can't believe anyone seriously thinks that Jodie can be innocent. Or that her narrative is true. It's so obviously premeditated. The evidence is overwhelming, isn't it?
And you would agree, though, that if you bought the gas can and it was approximately $13, it would not make any financial sense if you were looking to save for gas, correct?
I do agree with that.
And the other thing is, if you're looking to save for gas and you're trying to do this, wouldn't it have made more sense to have filled up in Pasadena, then driven up to Nevada, if that's where you were going, and once you get to Nevada, fill up the gas cans. Wouldn't it have made more sense then?
Yes, it would have, if that was my goal.
Well, your goal at that time when you were filling up was to travel up to Utah. Didn't you tell us that?
Yes,
So you didn't do that though, right?
I did not end up going directly to Utah.
I'm not saying whether or not you ended up going directly to Utah. At the time that you filled up these cans, your plans were to go to Utah, weren't they?
Yes,
Because of the time on there, correct?
yes,
Previously, you had told us that you didn't speak to Mr. Alexander until after that, right?
that's right.
In fact, you were at getting some coffee or something, right? At Starbucks, something like that, or some drink at Starbucks, correct?
Yeah, strawberry drink.
Right, at Starbucks, right?
Yes,
And so if you are going to go from Pasadena to Nevada, you can make it on a tank of gas, can't you? Overall.
I've never driven that freeway, so, I mean, this is the USA, so I would guess yes, but I've never driven that road, especially not at night, so.
You didn't think that perhaps all that way from Pasadena to Las Vegas, there wouldn't be a gas station? Did you believe that that was the case?
No, I didn't believe that was the case.
So if you really are trying to save on gas, you would have continued driving through California and filling up in California until you got to Nevada. And then you would have been able to purchase the cheaper gas, right?
That was a long question. I'm sorry, say it again.
Well, it would have made more financial sense for you to keep driving from Pasadena northeastbound until you got closer to the border, right?
That's right.
And then when you got to Nevada, then it would have made more sense to fill the gas cans, right?
Financially, yes.
And that was your goal, correct?
At the time I got the gas cans, that was my goal.
Your goal changed apparently, is what you're saying, right?
Just a very, very quick intermission, guys. If anyone knows who Nana Patty is, you'll know why I'm putting the link to her channel in the chat. And you'll know why I'm asking you should go over and give her a subscription. Links in the chat there. That's Nana Patty's channel.
I still wanted to save gas, but my priority changed.
Okay, and so with regard to exhibit number 237.012, this is the one that's approximately 10 gallons. And then 237.013, it's approximately 2.7 gallons. You see that?
Yes,
You were the person that actually put the gas into the gas cans, right?
that's right.
And you know that one of the gas cans was 5 gallons, right?
Yes.
The other was 5 gallons, right?
Well, I believe it was because that's what Daryl said.
They were the same size, weren't they?
They were the same size.
And so if that's the capacity, the most that each can carry is about 10 gallons, right?
Yes, I guess.
Yet you were able to put 10 gallons plus 2.774 gallons in containers, weren't you?
No, I think the other one, the 10-gallon, was probably the car.
Was what?
Probably the car, I would guess.
What did you, tard?
Car.
So you're saying that this one right here, 237.012 went to the car.
That's very possible.
And you're saying that this one right here, 237.001, went into the gas can. Is that what you're saying?
That sounds right.
Okay. Why are you breaking it up then, this purchase? If you're going to put 10 gallons in the gas can, what you're saying is you went to the pump, went to the gas cans, and you put 8.3 gallons worth of gas in it, right?
Yes.
Then you made that debit transaction, right?
Yes.
And then you put gas in the car, according to you, right
Yes.
here,
Mhm.
at 8:46, right?
Right.
You went inside to do that, right?
I think so, yes.
Well, no, it says initial payment. You can't pay at the pump, right?
Sometimes you can, but I don't
Well,
know
you
about
think
a
you can pay up
prepayment.
front there, right?
If I remember correctly, I don't know about ARCO, so, I mean, I prepaid is what I know.
You did prepay, and you prepaid inside, didn't you?
Listening.
Well, ma'am, let's just get to the bottom of this. You say that you don't know. It's 237.012. Do you see right here?
Oh, yes, clear.
Well, let me just ask the question.
Yes,
And that was around 9 o'clock in the evening, right?
somewhere that sounds right.
Well, that's what you told us. Can you give us a closer approximation?
No,
So you go there, and one of the things that you said is that you've got a strawberry drink, something like that?
yeah, strawberry frappuccino.
And while you were there, you call Mr. Burns, right?
I don't know if I called him from Starbucks, but I know we talked a few times that night.
And the plan was still for you to go up to Utah, right?
Yes,
And if you were to leave Pasadena at about the time that you said that you were going to leave, you would have arrived up in the West Jordan area at about maybe 10, 11 o'clock the next morning, right?
if I drove straight through, I think that's right.
It's about a 12-hour drive, I think is what you testified to, right?
That sounds right, yes.
But in talking to Mr. Burns, you never told him that you were not going to go straight to Utah, did you?
No, because I was going to go.
So the answer is no, you didn't, right?
No, I didn't tell him that.
In any conversation,
Do you hear the ever so slightly perceptible drop in the volume and the conviction in her voice? She is unraveling. She sees danger.
prior to arriving in Mesa that night or the next morning, you never communicated to Mr. Burns that you were going to take a detour, did you?
No, I didn't.
And you never contacted Matthew McCartney to tell him that you were going to take a detour, right?
I attempted to contact him before I decided to drive out to Mesa, I think.
Answer is you didn't let him know, though, right?
No, he didn't answer.
The bottom line is he didn't know either, right?
That's right.
And Mr. Brewer, you didn't call to let him know that either, right?
I think I called him too. I called both of them because I couldn't find my car charger or my phone charger. It was a phone charger.
You called both of them, but you didn't let either of them know of the change in plans, correct?
Say that again.
You called both of them at whatever time, but you never informed either of them of the change in plans, your supposed change in plans, right?
Yes, that's correct.
One of the things that you took on this trip, of course, was the gas cans, right?
Yes, I did.
Right. The other thing that you took when you took this trip was that you also brought a gun, didn't you?
Absolutely not.
Well, you remember having a conversation on June 10th of 2008 with Detective Florence of the Mesa Police Department.
Yes, I do.
You initiated that call by calling him first, right?
Yes, I did.
And after you called him, he called you back, right?
Yes.
And I think previously you said, well, I called him to sort of find out what was going on with the investigation, right?
Yes.
That was one of the reasons, right?
Yes.
You wanted to know what was going on, right?
Yes.
And during that conversation, you and he discussed a number of things, right?
Yes.
And during that time that you were talking to him, part of the purpose was, at that time, again, not only to get information, but the way you put it was to also sort of cast suspicion away from you, right?
Yes, for the time being. That was
Well, that phone call, one of your objectives was to get the detective to look somewhere else, right? Not you.
Yes.
And we know the reasons, but some of the reasons was that you didn't want to be incarcerated or be involved in the prosecution for this particular killing, right?
That would be accurate.
And so what you were doing, part of this telephone call, was in your best interest. In other words, you were trying to do things that benefited you, right?
I wouldn't put it like that.
Well, you were doing things so that he wouldn't see you as a suspect, right?
Yes.
So if he didn't see you as a suspect, that would benefit you, right?
I guess it depends on how you look at it.
Well, no, I'm asking how you would look at it if you don't want him to think of you as a suspect. That's the goal. That's part of the goal, right?
That was part of the goal for the call.
Right.
Yes.
That was part of the goal for the call. And so you wouldn't say anything, at least in a planned way, you wouldn't say anything that would make it look like you were a suspect, right?
I would attempt to not say anything.
Right. And it would be based on the world of knowledge that you had at that time, right?
I guess.
Well, no, you wouldn't call up and say, oh, I was the person that killed Mr. Alexander. You're not calling to say that, right?
No, I wasn't ready to say that.
No. And you're not calling to say, you really should look at this part of the desert because that's where I threw the gun, right?
No.
No, what you were trying to do is you were trying to say, look, I'm giving you all the information that I know so that you can look at somebody else, right?
I wasn't thinking of somebody else, just I was thinking not me.
All right, I'm giving you this information so that you don't look towards me, right?
Yes.
So when you are doing that, you wouldn't purposely say things to hurt you, would you? Hurt your case.
I don't know.
You think that you would purposely say things to hurt your case?
Oh, poor Jodie. It's not going well now, is it? It's not going well.
Probably not. That wasn't really my goal.
No, that wasn't your goal, so you really wouldn't, would you? But you, really, right?
I didn't consider it my case, but no, I wouldn't say things intentionally to hurt myself.
Okay, but you and he did talk about whether or not Mr. Alexander owned the gun, right?
Yes, I did.
And at that time, you did not know that you were being tape recorded, do you?
I assumed I was.
You assumed it was, but you didn't know, right?
I was told it was.
Who told you that it was? Did the detective tell you in advance?
An attorney told me.
In advance of you making the call?
Yes.
So you knew before you made the call that your conversation with the detective was going to be taped, right?
They said they are, yes.
So all the more reason then, knowing that it's going to be taped, it's all the more reason for you to be on the lookout, if you will, or be careful to not say anything to, incriminate you.
Yes.
Right? And so knowing that, you still made a statement about a gun, didn't you?
Yes, I didn't follow the attorney's counsel.
I'm not asking you whether or not you followed anybody's counsel. I'm just asking you, ma'am, whether or not you made a statement involving a gun.
Yes, I did.
And it isn't like Detective Flores came looking for you, right?
You mean physically?
No, called you. He never called you first, right?
First, no, he didn't.
No, you were the one that actually sought him out, right?
Yes.
And he returned your call, right?
Yes.
At that point, for all you knew, he didn't even know that you even existed, for all you knew, right?
No, I already knew that
He's good Irish, isn't he?
he knew.
Well, how could you possibly know what he knows?
Oh, before I forget as well, I was letting people know in the first few episodes of this. I've got the audio book and the ebook that Juan Martinez wrote about this trial. So if anyone's interested in having them, just if you send me an email, and I can send them to you. And it is kosher. I did pay for them, so just let me know, and I'll get that off to you. It's really interesting.
Ma'am.
I was going off of hearsay.
Well, but you don't really, it's what people tell you, but you don't know what he really knows, do you?
Do I know what he knows inside his head? No, I don't. But I knew that he knew about my name.
No, that's what you believe, but you don't know that, right?
That's what I had a strong belief.
All right.
Yeah, she's flailing around desperately, still in her more hushed tones, but she's flailing nonetheless, desperately.
And so you made a statement, and that statement is Exhibit 273. Let's listen to it.
All right. Well, can I call you again if I need more information, or if I have another question? Do you have any questions I can answer for you?
Yeah, do you know when all this happened? I mean, I got a call last night, but is there any word on?
Sometime between Thursday and last night. We're not sure yet. We haven't pinpointed yet.
And you said that maybe multiple people, because he's a big guy. Maybe you can't talk about this, but was there like any kind of weapons used, or was there a gun? Was there?
I can't say what type of weapon was used, but yeah, I'm guessing there was a weapon used by the type of injuries that were left behind. Do you know of him having any weapons at all in the house?
His two fists.
That's it?
Really?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. No handguns or rifles or.
No, he wasn't one to keep any of that I know of.
Fighting knives or anything